This weekend, dig into something new on GBH 89.7. From landscaping...
most of my succulents that I overwinter in a southern window, I water them once a week.
...to DIY excellence.
Paint primer combo, to me, is sort of like, the low-fat food craze. This is just silly branding.
The Garden Lady and This Old House Radio Hour. Saturdays starting at 1 on GBH 89.7. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on BPR on GBH and NEPM. We'll start the show with a conversation about Trump's so-called art of the deal in Iran. By almost every measure, it's worse than where we were more than a decade ago with the JCPOA negotiated by Obama, and worse than we were before Trump started this war of choice. What are your thoughts? Call or text. Then it's political analyst and podcaster Chuck Todd, plus the Boston Globe's Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein.
I'm Marjorie Egan. In the second hour, it's Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who cross-examined Todd Blanche on the Epstein files. Then we'll check in with Brendan Patrick Hughes. His podcast, Divine Intervention, has just won the prestigious Peabody Award, and his mother's going to be with him, Marianne Hughes. And we'll end the show with our Thursday favorite, Am I the A-hole, where you decide who is the bigger jerk. Maybe it's the mother and daughter who can't make up their minds. At the takeout deli counter, you decide. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced a 6-month review of U.S. forces in Europe. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports Hegseth spoke at NATO headquarters in Brussels today.
Hegseth repeated Trump administration talking points about European allies paying too much attention to gender equity and climate change. He slammed NATO allies for not joining the U.S. and Israeli war on Iran and claimed U.S. lives had been put at risk because some NATO countries refused to offer bases or even overflight for that war. Hegseth said the U.S. would adjust its NATO dues depending on which countries increased defense spending. The Trump administration has said it will reduce military support even if a NATO country comes under attack. But the U.S. is bound by NATO's Article 5 that an attack on one is an attack on all. The only time in history Article 5 was invoked was after 9/11. Many NATO countries sent troops and material to fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. Quill Lawrence, NPR News.
Motoring Club AAA says the cost of regular gasoline in the U.S. has fallen to $4 per gallon. The price has dropped 52 cents in the last month. NPR's Joel Rose reports it could take a while before airline passengers see cheaper fares.
When jet fuel prices shot up this spring, airlines responded by raising ticket prices and fees. Now, fuel costs are coming back to earth. The average price for a gallon of jet fuel in the U.S. dropped this week to less than $3, according to the tracking firm Argus. That's down more than $2 per gallon from the peak in April. But aviation consultant Michael Boyd says don't expect the airlines to give those price hikes back right away.
If people will pay it, why would you take it back?
Boyd says travelers have shown they are willing to pay higher airfares, at least so far. And airlines face rising costs across the board, including labor. Joel Rose, NPR News, Washington.
The Obama Presidential Center opens today in Chicago. NPR's Don Gagné says former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama will preside over the dedication.
It's traditional for former presidents to create a library to house records and documents from their presidency and to highlight their time in the White House. The Obama Center is different. First off, it's not a presidential library, the logic being that records from the Obama era were digital and are accessible online. There's a museum, but the center also features a branch of the Chicago Public Library. There's ample park space, even a regulation NBA-sized basketball court. Guests at the dedication ceremony will include former presidents Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, and Joe Biden. Not invited, President Donald Trump, who's known to regularly insult and demean Obama in speeches and to the press. Don Gagné, NPR News, Chicago.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court has ruled that a ballot question that would cut the state income tax in Massachusetts cannot proceed to the November ballot. The Globe reports today's ruling deals a blow to business groups who would argue the state is too expensive for residents and businesses. The battle over the ballot question has pitted members of the state's business community against legislative leaders and unions who have said the proposal would cut state revenue to the tune of $5 billion a year. The ruling says that a summary of the ballot question prepared by Attorney General Andrea Joy Campbell's office was not fair because it did not inform voters that the question, if passed, would also cut the state's long-term capital gains tax rate. Financial stability, infrastructure, investment, and optimism about Worcester's future were the big topics last night as Worcester City Manager Eric Batista delivered his third annual State of the City address at City Hall. The Worcester Guardian reports Batista spoke one day after the City Council approved Worcester's first $1 billion budget. Batista said the city is better positioned than many Massachusetts communities to weather economic uncertainty while continuing to invest in services, housing, infrastructure, and public safety. In sports, the Blue Jays go for a sweep of the Red Sox this afternoon at friendly Fenway. It's a 1:35 start. And the FIFA World Cup continues with matches from noon to 9 p.m. Golfers are going gaga today over the U.S. Open. In the forecast, clouds, possible thunderstorms this afternoon. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from Schwab, offering the Schwab Teen Investor Account, where teens can gain hands-on investing experience. It's co-owned by parents and teens, so parents can monitor the account while teens learn how to invest. More at schwab.com. This is NPR.
Welcome to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're not going to be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. It's closed in honor of Juneteenth, but we are going to be broadcasting here live in Brighton. The Attorney General of the Commonwealth will be on with us Tuesday at the Boston Public Library. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, there are a couple of preliminary things. One, United States Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland is going to join us at noon to talk about the deal that Trump struck vis-a-vis the war, the situation in Gaza, a whole bunch of things. He's the guy who totally eviscerated Todd Blanche at that hearing about a week or so ago. And number two, I just want to mention what Henry just said. This is huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
The question that would have cut the income tax by billions of dollars, state income tax, knocked off the ballot by the SJC, state's highest court. That's a big deal. We'll talk about it probably tomorrow. And at the same time, the Supreme Court handed down a bunch of decisions, none of which are major, but there was a major quote. Here's a quote in a marijuana case from Justice Alito, Marjorie's second favorite justice. In these circumstances, marijuana use today is like alcohol use at the founding. Pretty heavy, right?
Wow.
Obviously.
Maybe he's token up down there with
woman
Mrs.
with the
Alito.
flag is Mrs. Alito. That's why she put the flag upside down. In any case, the details of a Trump negotiated deal to stop fighting between the U.S. and Iran are out. It's even worse than we thought. Essentially, the promises made by Iran to not produce or develop nuclear weapons, including this deal, were included in the 2015 deal negotiated by Obama, by John Kerry and others. But Obama's deal included something like international partners, specifics, and enforcement mechanisms. So to recap, Trump went to war, spent $132 billion and counting. 13 Americans died. Thousands of Iranian deaths, including at a girls' school on day one, all while leaving us in a worse spot than we were before. Specifically, for example, the Strait of Hormuz was totally open. Now in 60 days, Iran can start charging tolls on that. But he is saying, quote, he got everything he wanted. Got it? So the lines are open at 877-301-8970. What do you make of Trump's so-called art of the deal? And this is an invitation. Trump supporters on a day like this generally just text us, call us. And tell us how we're missing something, and this is a fabulous deal, far better than Obama's. By the way, Obama outrageously gave them money they were entitled to with interest, which is $1.7 billion.
For weapons that they purchased and didn't get.
Exactly,
yes.
that they didn't get. Trump has given them $24 billion, not to mention authorizing a fund of hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild the country. But, of course, Obama's deal was far worse. 877-301-8970. Can I give you this is a technical analysis.
Certainly.
I've read it a lot. This guy has no idea what he's doing about anything at all. Well, here's what he talked about. Regime change. That happened?
No.
In fact, the new leaders are fabulous, he says yesterday. Love dealing with them. Not as radical they are. We're going to take all the nuclear dust, as he calls it, out of the country. Are they doing that?
No.
No.
They are not. And by
is
the
there
way,
unconditional surrender, as he was demanding? No. I mean, it is pathetic.
Yeah. By the way, under the Obama deal, Iran sent 97% of their stockpiles of nuclear materials to Russia, out of the country. Yeah. Trump was talking about getting out of the country before. I mean, it's possible, although I don't think it's likely that they may do better when they do negotiate more on the nuclear stuff. But as many analysts have pointed out, we've given up a lot of our leverage here. You know, we're allowing them to be freely selling their oil, making money.
We're restoring their economy. That's the only leverage we have.
I know, well, that's the point.
Can I tell you when the nuclear deal is going to be negotiated? Never. Is never good for you?
I think, too.
Never.
You know how you tell Trump is really in trouble? When even Fox News, you know, Brett Baer, who does this pretty straight news, he's the straightest of them all. But he did have a Fox News contributor on, and they didn't, you know, shut off the station when she started talking. And she went on, Leslie Marshall is her name. She said, "This is a great deal for Iran. Iran comes back richer. They get money, $300 billion. You have sanctions lifted, assets unfrozen. What do we get, Brett?" That was her question. And then she also talked about the Iranian people that were hungry and desperate for regime change. And she points out they are not getting that regime change, at least not now.
Lucy in Worcester has a question for you on text. They still can't even figure out why we even went to war with Iran. Can someone please explain it to me? Go ahead, Marjorie.
I think it is because Benjamin Netanyahu has been trying to convince the president for many years that the United States should partner up with Israel and go in and take out Iran. And I think the other presidents knew the perils of that. You know, Trump has surrounded himself with people not skilled in history, not skilled in this kind of strategy, I should say.
They've also not negotiators.
Yeah, and I think that Netanyahu appealed to his ego, what a great job he did in Venezuela, and talked him into it.
So there's a great, the obsession, you know, all of Trump's people talk about everybody who criticizes him has Trump derangement syndrome. And by the way, we probably do have Trump derangement syndrome here.
Oh, I do.
He's got Obama.
I think you have to at this point.
Derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
Did you see the poll that came out yesterday? They rated, there's a poll rating the performances, approval of the most recent presidents. The worst is Biden at 30%. Trump's in the 30s. You know who has almost twice as high an approval rating?
Obama.
How do you think that makes Trump feel?
It really ticks him off.
So here's Trump yesterday.
He's not at the library today.
Here is Trump explaining what a fabulous deal he got, particularly as compared to Obama, none of which is true. This is from yesterday.
They tried to bribe their way out of it. And you know what the Iranians did? They laughed at Obama and they said he's a stupid son of a bitch.
Yeah, this is the lowest rent, lowest character human being who has ever held that office in the history of this country.
Well, you know, this one is going to be
it's
going to be a tough one for him to spin. He's trying hard. He's going to blame J.D. Vance. Clearly, that's the guy.
He said it. Yes, sir. He said it specifically.
Doesn't work out. We're going to blame J.D. That's a joke. It's not really a joke. Yeah, so he's going to take the fall on this one. That's the but this is going to be a tough one. He's managed to lie his way through so many things or hide so many things. We just heard on the news, you know, that gas prices, thank goodness, are coming down. But as you pointed out, airline price tickets are not.
They're just the news. They just said that the price of airline fuel is down $2 a gallon. Are the airlines reducing their fares? No. And there's a quote from somebody on the national news just now. Why should they? The consumer is willing to pay it. Now, before we start, Marjorie, I have a quiz since you hate quizzes.
I hate quizzes.
What does MAGA stands for?
Make America Great Again?
That would be wrong.
Oh, okay.
As our friend, who is Boston Handy Woman, sent us yesterday,
Oh, yes.
MAGA now stands for Make Algae Grow Again. That's what the MAGA has.
Oh, yes. That's the reflecting pool. They're dumping hydrogen peroxide, trying to kill all the algae. It's like
bright green.
Oh, it's gross. I mean, have you ever seen that algae up front? It's really distressing. Yeah. And what about the ducks, Jim? A lot of ducks living down there.
Not for long.
They're going to kill the ducks with hydrogen peroxide. I'm a little concerned about that. 877-301-8970. Here's a text. There was unconditional surrender by Trump. Taco.
By the way, there was unconditional surrender, and it's obviously because all the Republicans are imploring him to do something because they're all going to lose their midterm elections because of the price increases caused by this nonsensical, pointless, destructive, deadly war. John and Gardner, you're first.
Hi, John.
Good morning, kids. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Marjorie, I know you love being corrected by Jim, so Leslie Marshall is like the representative of the left. She's a Democrat.
But they didn't shut her down. I mean, they knew what she was going to say. They brought her on. And Bret Baier, I have to say, is probably the most fair person I've seen on Fox. But did you watch the evening shows and see what the rest of them had to say? Sean Hannity, et cetera?
No, I watched the news program and I flip in and out of the stupid, the five before that. But at any rate, have we seen the gold leaf carriage finally return to the rotten, stinking pumpkin that it was and is with this guy? I'm kind of wondering. He's losing a lot of support.
Well, I'm hesitant, John. There's a good friend of Marjorie and mine. Every time I say, this is the turning point, it's over.
I know.
He ridicules me because it's never over. This is, we're going to talk a little bit later with Chuck Todd. In addition to the war, in addition to the algae, which is small potatoes, we learned, remember the taxpayers were going to pay nothing for the ballroom? Well, it turns out not only are we paying $300 million, but he knew and it started paying bills out of taxpayer funds when he said we weren't going to pay anything. I think that ship is sinking. And the sad thing is, it's one thing to lose a few $1 billion. It's another thing to lose a lot of lives unnecessarily.
Right.
And I hope he pays for
things.
it. Quick.
I'm sorry, before you let me go. I'm surprised for the last 90 days the Democrats have not been espousing some formulation, including the Strait of Hormuz and words like gifted and silver platter and handed over. And the other thing we've perhaps forgotten, this war was undertaken because of his hubris of what he did to Venezuela. And he thought he could be the, whatever you want to call it, and do the same thing to Iran, which is like, apples to oranges or something. But the hubris of this man, let us not forget, that's what got us into this war. Love you guys. Thanks.
John, thank you
John.
as always. Good to talk to you. 877-301-8970.
One of the texters is telling us that Tom Nichols, who writes for The Atlantic, we've had him on the show many times, a great analysis of war stuff, used to be at the War College in Newport, called this whole mess the death of expertise. And, that is one of the other things about this. What does Jared Kushner know about negotiating and the history involved here? He's busy doing deals with all these people, making billions of dollars. Or Witkoff, who's a real estate developer.
Witkoff, who went into a meeting with Putin with no negotiator, with no translators. Right. He allowed Putin's translator to translate what Putin was saying to him.
So that was the other. There was no. I hope they had some people. We just didn't know about it. But I never saw any people.
You just quoted Nichols. Repeat the quote you had the other day when he was talking about when Trump
the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, he was saying the president says, "I unconditionally free up the Strait of Hormuz."
This is our president.
Yeah, this is our president, Donald Trump. And Nichols says something like, that's about as significant as my cat saying we're going to open up the Strait of Hormuz. It's the Iranians that have to open up the Strait of Hormuz. And as you said before, it looks like it's going to be open for 60 days and then subject to, they and Oman are going to be talking about fees.
Which, incidentally, let me repeat, they were not charging. It was free and open before in 60 days. They are permitted under the agreement Trump signed yesterday to start charging tolls.
Don't you remember right after Trump got in and he decided he was going to rip up the horrible, terrible, disgraceful Obama deal? There were all these people that said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. We have got a pretty good system here. It's not a perfect system, but we sunsets, yes, on the nuclear stuff, but we have inspectors in there. They weren't building nuclear bombs. And as soon as he ripped it up, they started. So this idea that he was going to save us from the nuclear weapon, he could have just, if he had those expert negotiators, dealt with those sunset things and dealt with
negotiated from that
point. That's what could
your
have
floor,
happened.
and then go from there.
That's what happened.
Well, it's because, as I say, Obama derangement syndrome. And let me tell you,
Pete
the joy
Hegseth,
I took. I don't care about how Obama's rated. I care that Donald Trump saw that poll this morning and saw that Obama's current rating as president is roughly half of Obama's.
And one last thing, and then we had the guy that's running the Defense Department, that lunatic Pete Hegseth, reveling in the bombs falling from the sky, the violence. violence, the no mercy we're going to show. I mean, that's who was running this war. I mean, it's really horrible. Jeff,
this is a good way. Before you do,
what?
Jeff, anonymous text says, "You watch. Cuba's next. They will end up owning Florida." That's a pretty good line there, anonymous text. I'm sorry, Jeff and Newton. You're next. Welcome.
Sorry. Hi.
Hi. Good morning. This is the latest iteration of Donald Trump, the businessman. He said he wanted his name on planes to fly. So he claimed, I bought it, I made a lot of money, I sold it. 3 lies. He was in charge of negotiating the deal. He bid $270 million. His partners, he put up $25 million. His partners put up the other $245. They told him, you paid too much, go back and renegotiate. He renegotiated an even worse deal because he accepted a few more planes, thinking that he would have them when his planes were out of operation, not knowing a plane that doesn't fly is a liability, not an asset. He then wanted to do his gold and marble deal. They told him there was no money, plus they had to explain to him that every ounce of weight you add to a plane makes it more expensive to operate. So that didn't go through. He ran it.
No, we got that, Jeff. We got that. I mean, it's an endless litany. And you could do it. You could do it till 1 o'clock when we're off the air. But what's the bottom line, Jeff?
The bottom line is he gets involved in things he doesn't know anything about. He makes a mess of them, and then in business, he's able to declare bankruptcy or just be fired, as he was with his airline. In this case, lives have been lost. America is poorer, both internationally and domestically. And my question is, how many times do people have to be duped and realize that at the end of the day, America is worse off with this man in office every single day?
Well, it's a question I ask either publicly or privately every day. You know, people say, well, his numbers are dropping. Thank you, Jeff, for the call. He's in the mid to high 30s. My response to that is when people are celebrating, who are the 30+% of people who still think this guy is doing a good job?
I think it's the hate the libs, own the libs crowd. We just want to own the libs.
Yeah, but can I tell you something? I've thought a lot last night. I read this morning and last night a lot of comparisons, for example, the JCPOA, the Obama thing, and Trump's. If he had one area where he really outstripped what Obama did, you could say, well, he's going to focus on that, say that's the most... You and I spent a lot of time this morning, not that we're experts on this. There is no area in which he made advances that I'm aware of, maybe on the margin somewhere. And when it comes to the Strait, when it comes to payments to Iran, when it comes to bolstering their economy, it's not even close. Trump is the loser.
Yeah,
and so are we.
Like I said, it's going to be hard for him to spin this one. And remember the financial person that said that if Trump had just put the money his father left him when he died in the bank, he would have made more money than when all his business ventures. He just could have sat there and let the interest and stuff like that, the investments grow.
Cindy and Methuen says, don't forget about why war was started, to distract from the Epstein files. And again, I say this almost every day because it's a credible source, more credible than Marjorie and me. Jim McGovern, who's a totally responsible member of Congress, told us right after the war began that in his estimation it was all about distraction from the Epstein files. Obviously, he was emboldened by the speed with which they were able to get rid of Maduro in Venezuela. But I think that was the primary motivation, too.
Let's go to Mary in the car. Hi, Mary.
Hello, Mary.
Hey, I agree that this is just like the war was started as an Epstein distraction because they were closing in on him. And I think also this current peace agreement deal is partially just to play the market with the oil prices and oil futures and do more insider trading. The other thing, this $300 billion, I think interest from this, he's going to hold the money for a while and collect the interest on it. And I wouldn't be surprised as soon as they can let Israel bomb something and Iran help Hamas retaliate or something, then they can just like say, oh, no, we're not going to pay that. And then that $300 billion is just going to disappear somewhere.
By the way, I
yeah,
should
the
say,
$300
Mary,
billion is not necessarily our money.
well, not only not
Yeah.
necessarily our money, most experts, Mary, who I've read or heard since the deal was announced, well, the substance came out yesterday, said that there's no chance there's ever going to be $300 billion. We've authorized it, and it's very unlikely to come from us, and it's fairly unlikely to come from anybody, at least in those numbers. Nevertheless, Trump has agreed that amount of money could be funneled into Iran. Mary, thank you for your call.
You know, we haven't
Appreciate it.
mentioned this is really weird. This MOU declares the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon, which is very odd because the United States and Iran are really not
U.S. ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S. said they have no intention of stopping what they're doing
So
in
Lebanon is mentioned twice, even though it seems that we have no power to tell the Israelis.
Well, how about what you mentioned to me this morning, that the U.S. is already in violation of one of the early provisions through the threat language.
That's right.
Read
Here
that.
it also says the MOA, not to undertake from now on or initiate any war or military operation or to refrain from the threat or use of force against each other. And Donald Trump has already
threatened them yesterday.
Yesterday to
drop bombs on their heads.
Yeah. So I don't
Like
know.
a
This whole thing
4-year-old.
seems a little half-baked here. And poor J.D. Vance, he's sent around the country to kind of tell everybody how great this is.
Did you see Marco Rubio standing behind Trump yesterday at his events?
Did he look sick to his stomach?
Steely-faced. I mean, this is, I think, he is smart enough to know.
How much humiliation has he taken? He was Mr. USAID.
As a senator,
and then he had
was.
to swallow that.
He was.
And he's had to swallow Iran. And he's had to swallow the Venezuela not turning out the way he thought it was going to turn out. So, boy, that's a lot of swallowing, Jim.
Well, he's going to be president of Cuba in like about a week. So, Zach in Springfield, hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hi.
Two points on this. One, the deal is obviously extremely bad, but I mean, it is at best a salvaging measure for what is a strategic defeat. The Iranians were able to close the strait. We couldn't get the flow moving again. So now we've had to scrap a good bit of our leverage. And to the previous caller's point, even if the investment fund doesn't materialize, the fact that we're going to remove sanctions as part of this is already puts the Iranians on a much better footing. But
no question.
Kind of going to your last comment there, Jim, for number two, I'm deeply concerned about what happens next now that if this all goes forward, if the U.S. can disengage a bit more, I'm fearful that they take this as a license that Trump decides, let's move on to Cuba now, or makes yet another mess.
And the other thing, Zach, I thought we were going to go. I admit my political predictions are wrong almost without exception. I think anybody is naive. Anybody who thinks there's going to be a nuclear deal in 60 days or 6 months well, Trump won't be there 6 years. In 50, it's just not going to happen. He's going to hope that it fades into the ether and moves on to the next distraction. Zach, thanks for your call. Appreciate it.
Chris from Belmont apparently is rooting for Cuba. He says, I would love Cuba to take Florida off our hands. Good riddance. So there's somebody that's not enthusiastic about spending their vacations in
Dave
Florida.
and Webster, you have 45 seconds. Take it away.
Thank you, Jim and Marjorie.
Sure.
First-time caller, long-time contributor.
Thank you.
My question about the agreement they signed is what are we hearing about maybe the side deals that were signed there? Has there been any comment about that? And I'll take any answer off the air.
I don't know
I didn't see anything about
you mean like a
side
real
deals.
estate deal with Jared or something? I don't know of side deals. I think the body of the agreement itself is embarrassing enough. But Dave, I haven't heard about it, and if we do, we promise we'll share that information with you. Vance is speaking now. We'll bring you an update
Vance.
on what he has to say about that.
Okay,
in a couple
thank
of
you
minutes.
for all your texts and your calls. Coming up after this quick break.
Oh, you know what he just said?
What?
The Haitians are eating all the ducks that are being poisoned by the algae. He just said that. So.
Okay. The poor ducks. Yeah, we're concerned about the ducks in the pool being dumped full of hydrogen peroxide. Anyway, we're going to talk with political commentator Chuck Todd up next. We're going to ask him about the war and the ballroom and what is the state of the reflecting pool with all that algae, not to mention the tarp that's hanging over the Kennedy Center.
That'll be coming down soon.
Hiding the name that was removed. That would be Donald Trump's name. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Chuck Todd is next. Listen to BPR and GBH and NEPM streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Juneteenth is a Texas story that became an American one. The day word of emancipation reached Galveston more than 2 years after Lincoln's proclamation. In Boston, the Museum of African American History marks the moment with Freedom, a Juneteenth celebration on Joy Street. Plus, we preview Momentum, a citywide arts festival spotlighting Black artists, culture makers, and creative life across Boston. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the International Institute of New England, an advocate of refugees and immigrants in Boston since 1924, serving thousands of our newest neighbors annually. iine.org. And Dean and Hamilton with Compass Real Estate, representing buyers and sellers in Cohasset, sponsor of the South Shore Art Center's 71st Annual Festival on Cohasset Common, June 19th through 21st. More at deanandhamilton.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No library tomorrow. It's closed for Juneteenth. We will be live from Brighton. Attorney General is with us Tuesday at the library, and United States Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, is with us in 35 minutes. Here now via Zoom, political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, new host of this show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at the Chuck Toddcast at toddcast.com, and the co-host of the new podcast Dynastic. Hello, Chuck Todd.
Well, hello there, Mr. Browdy.
Hey, Chuck, great to talk to you as always. So we were just talking to our listeners about this. It seems, the president has said that he got basically everything he wanted. It seems like that's not really what happened with this MOU or whatever it is, this Iran MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. What do you think?
Look, it is about the only thing you can praise him for is that he didn't keep digging.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's, sometimes he's so stubborn he'll keep digging in, and this was something that was a loser, and he saw that it was a loser, and he said out loud the thing he was most concerned about, the stock market, right? And so that was, as always, the only guardrail that matters with him, and it is a guardrail that is at least effective in getting him to change course. But this is, we talk about all the different ways that he has disrupted, the global order, if you will. The next couple of presidents have a ton of work to do to restore American prestige, to restore American trust with our allies. But wow, this is real damage, right? Think about the three areas. He's really only had foreign policy successes that I think even the grudging liberals would say it in Latin America, right? It's basically only the Western Hemisphere, and even that, right, considering what he's done with Canada. But he has now created distrust in Europe and making those nations feel like they have to go find another way on defense. He has really made the Asian allies of the United States very nervous, but they have no other choice but to hope that we, are helpful. And now we're going to splinter the Middle East into 2 or 3 different entities. The UAE and the Saudis will no longer be on the same page. UAE and Israel will be one entity. The Saudis and Qatar and Egypt will be another. And then you're going to have Iran out there. He really messed this up. And he probably set back the ability of America to sort of call the shots in the Middle East for a couple of decades.
Do you think there'll ever be a nuclear deal?
No. This is a 60-day deal that will continue to get pushed. They will be negotiating. There's this habit that Trump has, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Right, There'll be so many 2-week extensions to this. Remember what it says in the MOU, they have 60 days to negotiate a nuclear deal, and you can extend the time by mutual agreement. Man, you know what the Iranians love to do? Talk.
Yeah.
And you know what? You know what the Donald Trump is going to love to do? Memory hole this.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he's going to try as fast as possible to pivot to Cuba. He is going to desperately try. You know, he's looking for. The man is searching for a legacy achievement that everybody has to like agree matters, and he hasn't found it yet. Right? He's been desperate for it, desperate for the whether it's the Nobel Peace Prize. Right? He's just consumed by. Because I think in this case, he knows he's done that. His presidency is going to be an asterisk eventually if he doesn't do something consequential in a positive way.
Well, you don't think
And so
he can
he's-
say, wait,
he's
Chuck,
seeking one out.
you don't
Yeah, he's
think he can
seeking this
say
out.
now that he has the brightest green algae that any president has ever had?
Can I tell you? I can't get enough of the woke algae story.
Neither
First of
can
all,
I.
love
I
it.
love it.
Woke algae is. I use woke algae. It's the name of my fantasy golf betting team that I just participated in. Right, like for the U.S. Open, my little team that I'm in a pool, and I'm calling it woke algae. I mean, it is. Because we've been the war on woke ideology has been one. Obviously a big there's no doubt this is liberal algae. This
Absolutely.
is not MAGA algae, right? There's no way. This is a bunch of liberal, green-loving, algae, with their woke algae and all that stuff. So that story is, it's amazing. It's something nobody cared about,
right?
Until he decided it was something we should all care about.
Well, you know something though. I heard your podcast with Ian Bremmer, a Middle East expert, saying, speaking of woke ideology, that he does seem to think that this could hurry the shift away from fossil fuels, away from oil and gas to renewables, and I found that encouraging.
I did too. I mean, it's out of necessity, right? We always knew it was never going to be a choice. It was going to be, what is the mother of invention and innovation? It's necessity, right? And when you think about a lot of these second world countries, okay, not the big guys, not even the big European countries, but the sort of the next level down who import all their energy, right? And all their energy was coming through there. And they're like, we can't, take Australia, right? They cannot afford or a New Zealand to be relying on that. And so they're all this will accelerate this. And of course, China is the winner on this. I mean, he is right. Private American industry is going to jump in on this alternative fuels business because we have too much energy demands in this country, right? It isn't going to be, enough with all the data center energy that we're going to need and all of that. So no, the irony is that we're probably going to aggressively move to alternative fuels thanks to this war. So yeah, there's an unintended positive consequence.
Yeah, one last thing about this. I was wondering if there is a way for the president to spin this for his very loyal MAGA base, the war in Iran meeting. I mean,
I don't know what it would
gas
be.
is down a little bit, right? Gas is down.
Yeah. Again, he manufactured this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? Gas was not a problem until he decided to do this. We were having an inflation problem thanks to his tariffs. This accelerated that, made it worse. I guess this will make people forget how much they didn't like the tariff increase prices, right? And so we'll have a little bit of relief there, but I don't know how he spins this beyond those that just accept whatever he says.
Well, that actually on that front,
drink the Kool-Aid.
Speaking of inflation, let me repeat what we heard on NPR at the top of the show. I've already mentioned it once. Is they were talking about how the price of airline fuel is down $2 a gallon, and the prices are not coming down. And they have an airline industry analyst, I don't remember his name, my apologies, who said the prices aren't going to come down. Why should they? Consumers are willing to pay it. So they go up because of what happened in the Strait. And if they come down, it'll be a little and a little bit
Not a
later.
lot,
So
yeah.
in any case, so
yeah, I will say this. I just booked a couple. I did book a couple of summer flights that I'd been postponing. I was pleasantly surprised.
Oh,
the prices are reasonable. Oh, good.
They were reasonable. They had, and 2 weeks ago the price was different. So maybe I fooled the algorithm for a day. I don't know, the pricing algorithm.
As long as they're not diverted to that place in El Salvador. You know, the thing that it is getting no attention, which is driving me nuts, and I understand it, is the Washington Post story about the ballroom. The ballroom isn't going to cost the taxpayers $1, as we well know, except for the $300 million that it's not only going to cost us, but that the Trump administration was already paying invoices with taxpayer money prior to him lying to the American people.
They violated the law. Well, I think they violated the law here.
That's exactly my question. So where does that go? Nowhere, because the DOJ is owned by Donald Trump?
So here's what it would take. It would take the Congress to say that these are inappropriate. This was not what the funds were intended to do. And Congress could ask the Justice Department, but that's, good luck.
Yeah.
You know, the other piece of that, we should not leave out of it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. I mean, that's yes, I don't think this is legal, what he did, but I don't know what controlling legal authority will investigate.
And to add to this, by the way, which is, I don't know if it's of questionable legality, it's of questionable ethics, reports are that the corporations that donated the private sector share of this have since the donations gotten $50 billion in federal contracts. I mean, the grifting and the thievery and the lying is baked into everything they do.
And you know what he figured out, and this is where I think, it gets it to the abusing of the attention economy, but on the grifting, if you have one contract that you grift off of, everybody notices, but when you do 100, you can't keep up, right?
Yeah.
Like
That's
it is
exactly right.
It's sort of like what a lesson to learn, right? Don't do a small time, don't try to cheat one expense report, do everything and assume they won't catch it all.
Well,
we're talking to Chuck Todd.
Chuck Todd, it's very pathetic. I think there was it Knicks on Saturday night? Who was on Saturday night? The soccer game? There was something. It was some big sport thing Saturday night. And while I'm watching, whatever it was.
Pretty big sport thing to New York, but that's all right.
That's right. It's huge in New York. Whatever it was, I was much more interested in live streaming on your former station, MSNBC, or MS, what is it now? The live stream from the TARP, from the Kennedy Center when they were taking down the president's name. And as you know, they had to delay it because of thunderstorms and stuff. But we never got to see it. I don't think we've still gotten to see it. They've got a big tarp over his name. There's some poor woman. She's a lifelong...
What does that tell you about him?
Well, exactly. And what does it tell you that there's a woman outside there for a week and a half waiting to see the gone name or the debris that's left on the wall from the name? Yeah. But what does it tell you about him?
I think it tells you and this is what's going to happen with this Iran deal, right? When he never wants to linger on bad things.
Yeah.
And anything that makes him look bad, he wants to memory hole and move on from as fast as possible. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at it, type of thing. Look, the reflecting pool he's not going to care about on July 5th. Yeah. Once the 4th is over and his second birthday party, I just wish he'd just go run a Chuck E. Cheese. He'd just I mean, can you believe? I mean, think about it. Basically, what the UFC fight was the equivalent of, I think, for one of my kids' 8th or 9th birthdays, I rented a bouncy house. And, I put it in my backyard and it came with this little inflatable generator. And it was actually pretty reasonable. And all of a sudden, I had this huge bouncy house. I didn't call it the Claw, but I had these gladiator 9-year-olds jump into this bouncing house and they would, have rounds and rounds of fun. What I didn't have was a creepy old man staring at these gentlemen, at these people, moving around each other.
Weird.
Also, none of the kids said Michelle Obama was a man, probably. Chuck, we talk to you almost every week.
By the way, he said that after he thanked his Lord and Savior.
I missed that part.
Yeah, that's
right. You got to remember, because once you say that, then you're inoculated from being a moron. Yeah. Is that what we're trying to... I do not understand why people that are religious aren't offended when people use religion as if they say this, then they can then behave and say whatever they want after they proclaim their love for a religious figure.
Oh, Raphael Warnock, he's a preacher and the
nuts.
senator down there in Georgia. I think that's his whole book, is saying you can't be talking about your Lord and Savior when you're talking about screwing poor people. It just doesn't work. You can't do it. So I'm glad. I don't know how many people will read it, but he's calling it out.
When we started talking to Chuck, Vance was still doing his press conference. When he was asked about the intense negotiations with the Iranians to come, he said, Joy Behar is way tougher than the Iranians, and we're good friends now. Really. Okay, so...
Well, I have to say, the fact that Vance is the one having to eat this S sandwich is fascinating to me. I put out an APB for the Secretary of State 3 days ago on Twitter, and I was sort of joking. My word, he's still has not been seen or heard from.
Well, heard from. You saw the look on his face standing behind Trump yesterday during one of Trump's pronouncements, like a death in the family. Before you go, we talked to you a lot about the Plattner race.
But he does have the viceroy of Cuban.
That's right.
Cuba's future. That's true.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So Susan Collins says, and we've talked about this ad nauseum on the show, that she was assured by Brett Kavanaugh he believed in precedent, wouldn't overturn Roe v. Wade. Her position is, I disagree with Kavanaugh's vote. I do not regret that vote. She is going to regret that comment, is she not?
That's an I thought about this, and I wondered, okay, let's say she took the other. Let's say she said, that was a mistake. Is that helpful or is it worse? I don't, my guess, look, she was so sure with her answer that it tells me they've had the conversation.
Oh, I'm sure.
This was batted around. What, is it worth saying, had I known in advance, I wouldn't have voted for him? What does that say? I think they decided there's too many people on the right that they need. This is the trap moderate Republicans are in. They can't win without the MAGA vote in some form. And so what's better politics for her to get to 50 may actually hurt her chances to get the first 20, right? Like when you're putting together your winning electoral margin, if you're trying to get to 50 plus 1 up there, you still need a chunk of pro-life voters in Maine. And that's always the line she's had to walk there. So I'm with you. I think the sentence will become an ad, and we'll see it a lot, and it might be the reason she loses. I'm not sure the alternative would have been any better for her politically, for what it's worth.
Chuck Todd, we are out of time, but thank you so much as always. Love talking to you.
All right, guys.
Chuck Todd, national political commentator, host of the Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, and the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com, plus the new podcast Dynastic. Thanks again, Chuck Todd. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to talk with Senator Chris Van Hollen. You may remember he's the one that cross-examined would-be Attorney General Todd Blanche about the Epstein files and about Trump's slush fund. We're going to ask him about that, the war, and some other things. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR, GBH, and NAPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The World Cup is spilling into Massachusetts streets. The world's game in our community. GBH News is capturing the energy, the culture, and the news behind every game.
I could tell you where I was in every World Cup since 1986.
They are amazing. Boston is my #1 place now.
You have bragging rights for 4 years. 4 friggin' years.
Follow along at gbhnews.org/World Cup.
Support for GBH comes from you. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering over 90 short courses that pair MIT research with hands-on frameworks designed to be applied immediately at work. More at executive.mit.edu. And Hunter Higgs LLC, presenting Black Cat, a new play by Dan Hunter, a drama exploring science, Parkinson's disease, memory, and discoveries of the soul. June 18th through June 28th. Ticket information at bostonplaywrights.org.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. No library tomorrow. It's closed for Juneteenth, but we will be live from Brighton. The Attorney General will join us Tuesday at the library. And by the way, a change of plans here. Senator Van Hollen's schedule has changed. So rather than joining us at 12:06, he will join us in about a minute. We're going to talk about a bunch of things. Obviously, his reaction to the situation of the war. He's been very involved in the issue of what the America's policy should be vis-a-vis Israel and Israel's treatment of Palestinians in the West Bank and in Gaza. And there was a rather incredible exchange. We can actually play that right now while we're waiting for the senator. Here is his discussion, with discussions by a poor choice of words. He had Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche there testifying before the Senate. This is in May. And Senator Van Hollen was grilling him about the $1.8 billion, the anti-weaponization fund, the slush fund, and asking him if it could be used to pay people who'd assaulted police officers. You'll first hear the senator and then Todd Blanche.
If you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible. Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I expect that there will be rules.
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me?
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5 members.
You can certainly set up the rules. I would hope you would make a rule that anyone convicted of assaulting a police officer or a violent crime is simply not eligible. They should not apply.
Well, that was a pretty important moment, and not only an important moment vis-a-vis the $1.8 billion slush fund, but a pretty important moment, I think, Marjorie, in terms of his upcoming Senate confirmation to be the permanent Attorney General. Obviously, that's going to rise, don't you think?
Well, I think that's going to be a big part of his problems when he's before Congress for his hearing. I think he's also going to have a big problem with explaining. I mean, Pam Bondi kind of threw him under the bus, said he was the guy that was in charge of the Epstein files. And people may recall that it was Todd Blanche that went down to do the interview with Ghislaine Maxwell.
In any case, if you listened to Donald Trump yesterday defending his deal with Iran, and of course it's much better in every respect than what Obama did, and John Kerry was with us a few weeks ago. Of course, that is not true. Here is our favorite incoherent moment from Donald Trump's pronouncements yesterday.
They were enriching material under granite mountains. Granite being, for those not in the construction business, granite being the strongest stone. It's not as pretty as marble, but it's much stronger. It's a lot stronger. Like the new granite I put.
Okay, enough. He goes on and on and on and on, talking about granite and marble, just insanity. Here to talk about that, well, not really about that, about the resolution, allegedly, of the war, the situation in Gaza and the West Bank. Todd Blanche is the nominee for Attorney General, and more is the United States Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen. Senator, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thanks.
Did you learn a lot about granite and marble yesterday, or did you know all that before?
Whenever you listen to the president, you just go down these rabbit holes, and you never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
What I know is he wants to talk about everything except for the fact that the war in Iran was a huge blunder from the get-go. That's one thing he doesn't want to talk about much.
Yeah, well, let's elaborate on that a little bit, Senator. What did you think of this memorandum of understanding and where we're going to be 60 days from now with Iran and the nukes, et cetera?
Well, what it showed me was exactly why this war was such a big mistake to begin with, because the memorandum of understanding essentially says Iran will now open the Strait of Hormuz, which of course was open before the war started. But, we, the United States, will pay to make that happen in the form of lifting sanctions. Look, this was a blunder from the get-go. Donald Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu launching an attack on Iran. I do believe that when you're digging a hole, you should just stop digging. So probably what's worse than this agreement would be continuing this stupid war.
So speaking of war, let's turn to another part of the world if we can. Senator, you wrote a terrific piece at the end of May called Hard Truths My Party Needs to Face about American policy vis-a-vis Israel in light of Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank. Could you share with us what you had to say in the Times, please?
Yes, I think we need to move away from a policy of unconditional, reflexive support for the government of Israel, regardless of what actions the government of Israel takes. So after October 7th, Israel was clearly justified in going after Hamas. They were not justified in imposing collective punishment on all the Palestinian people in Gaza and devastating the Gaza Strip, nor are they justified in continuing to take more and more land away from Palestinians in the West Bank to not only look the other way while you have this ongoing settler violence, but actually have Israeli security forces complicit in violence against Palestinians. And, you know, the United States has said for a long time we support a two-state solution. We support self-determination for Israelis, but also for Palestinians. It's just we haven't done a damn thing about it. And so it's long overdue that we make a final effort, because for those of us who believe in a values-based foreign policy, that we should actually stand up and promote things, not just through words, but actions, things like self-determination, human rights, we've got to change course. That was the message.
We're talking to Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. You know, you've been in Congress for a while, so you know what
Are you leaving this? Because I want to stay on this.
No, I'm staying
okay,
on
I'm
this.
sorry.
You know what people may talk about privately. I was stunned. It's not just Republicans here or President Trump. It's Democrats and Joe Biden. The American people saw what was going on in Gaza, and the tide has turned in a lot of people's minds, where Palestinians have emerged as more sympathetic to many of American people than Israelis. So why this inability to see this by Biden and by much of Congress?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the Biden administration was absolutely feckless when it came to holding the Netanyahu government accountable for the devastation of Gaza. In fact, the U.S. government was fully complicit because we essentially provide a blank check to Israel for the weapons that were used in Gaza. So look, this is why I thought it was time that we actually call things as they are. The reality is that certain groups like AIPAC have a lot of sway in the United States Congress, and their position has been unconditional support for the actions of the Israeli government, regardless of what those actions are. And members of Congress who stray from that position can find themselves, you know, on the receiving end of millions and millions of dollars of TV commercials from AIPAC-backed super PACs. So that's one of many reasons.
By the way, just as an aside, but it's not really an aside, your wife, Catherine Wilkins, at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, has written some great stuff about the situation in Gaza and done some great interviews. So congratulations to her, too. Can we move from hard to soft power? I believe you're the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Subcommittee that oversees USAID. We've talked a lot about that, about how Senator Rubio was a champion before Donald Trump told him what he had to think, and he gets rid of it. Dr. Atul Gawande was with us a bunch of months ago and said at the end of last year already hundreds of thousands of people have died. We ask this question in many different kinds of settings. When a normal human being is elected president in November of 28 and takes office in January of the following year, how long will it take that individual to recreate what Trump has destroyed in terms of this incredibly important soft power relationship with so many of the most needy parts of the world? Or is this gone forever?
Well, first, thank you for emphasizing the soft power element of American influence, because, you know, Donald Trump and the Trump administration thinks everything can be solved in the world through military power alone. Look at what they're trying to do in Iran, and look what actually happened. They've kind of learned that you can't impose your will through military power alone. So that's why it's so important that we have both the tools of diplomacy, but also development. For example, trying to prevent millions of people, thousands of people from being killed by diseases, which not only helps them, as you know, but stops those diseases from spreading across oceans and coming here to the United States. So it's going to take a long time to rebuild what we had, and we shouldn't, rebuild it in exactly the same form, but the mission that you described and that AID delivered is one that we're going to have to rebuild in whatever form it takes. Again, because it's in our own national interests to do so. And, the Trump administration, unfortunately, doesn't recognize that small investment pays big dividends for the American people.
Do you think, by the way, Rubio, obviously you serve with him. It's one thing to make a modest switch, but for example, to be an anti-war crusader like Vance and then engage in this, or in the case of Rubio, be a passionate Republican embracer of the mission of USAID and then dismantle it. Do you think this is a problem for him, or he just is so ambitious that he doesn't give a damn about who he hurts along the way? I know you're not a shrink, but you know what I mean.
Well, look, I mean, and I think the American people can see that. And so I do think that, depending on what he decides to do next, American people will take a look at it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, Marco Rubio is probably exhibit A of a complete Trump lobotomy when it comes to foreign policy. I mean, I was here in the Senate when he delivered speeches, impassioned speeches about the importance of human rights, the rule of law, about Americans' moral global leadership, not just the military aspect of our leadership. And now he's done a complete 180. He's now part of the, might makes right crowd, that there's only one instrument of U.S. foreign policy. That's our military. And they've essentially thrown overboard the idea of America as a country that supports human rights and democracy and self-determination and the rule of law overseas. Look, I grew up in a foreign service family. We moved, back and forth during my early years. So I understand that the world is a messy place. And I also understand that American foreign policy has never been perfect, far from perfect. But we have tried to stand up for these universal ideals. And, the Trump administration and Marco Rubio essentially have thrown all of those overboard. And it is coming back to hurt us because it really harms our credibility overseas, including when we, have a double standard, when we apply one set of rules to one country and another set to another country, for example, to the Netanyahu government in Israel.
We're talking to Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. You pulled off one of the great grillings. We were all cheering here, at least some of us were, when you were asking would-be Attorney General Todd Blanche about whether or not he could commit to not. We played the sound we played the listeners, so our listeners could hear it right before you came on. Whether or not he would agree not to give any of the so-called slush fund money to a person who committed a violent act against a police officer. They wouldn't be eligible, and he basically, correct me if I'm wrong, danced.
Oh, dance is the right way to describe it. I mean, no doubt about it. He would not rule it out. I mean, this should have been a no-brainer of a question that, people who'd been convicted of, assaulting police officers would not be entitled to a taxpayer-funded payout. There was also a case I raised where somebody who'd been convicted on January 6th went on to be convicted for child molestation in Florida. And he refused to rule out the possibility that that person would get your tax dollars in the form of a payout. So this is why, he should be completely disqualified from coming from the acting Attorney General. And as I pointed out there, he really has been acting as the president's personal attorney, which was his previous job. And we really shouldn't ensconce him and put him permanently in as Attorney General of the United States.
And he's also up to his eyes in the whole Epstein file thing, because he went down and interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell, and then a couple of days later she winds up in a low security college campus type prison. Never explained that. So how can he survive to become the next Attorney General with all these problems?
Well, he certainly should not pass the test of the kind of both ethical standards and character necessary to be the Attorney General of the United States. I also asked him at that hearing whether he'd be willing to meet with some of the survivors of the Epstein assaults and crimes. And he said, well, he really had, but moments after the hearing ended, the survivors group released a report, a letter saying that's not true. He really hasn't done that. And so we're continuing to push him to keep his word. He said at the hearing that he would meet with them, and to this date right now, he has still not. I'm sure those issues will come up at his hearing as well.
So after you finished cross-examining Blanche, did you make a calculation as to when exactly your whole family was going to be indicted? Have you made that calculation yet, or you're leaving that to be decided? Do you know?
Yeah.
You know, between that that back and forth and the back and forth I had a week earlier with FBI Director Kash Patel. Yes, we've definitely,
You're
moved
screwed,
up on
let's face it.
Yeah.
On their
By the way,
on
let me
their
just
political.
say. Oh, go ahead, I'm
hit
sorry.
list. Well, no, but these guys also, they were also really angry when last year I went down to El Salvador in the case of this Kilmar Abrego Garcia who'd been snatched off the streets of Maryland. They were furious about that too, all sorts of threats at that time. But look, this is sadly the world we live in, right? That the guy who's been nominated to be the Attorney General of the United States is somebody we all have to worry is going to then use that position to come after adversaries of the president. I mean, what could go wrong, right? Now we have Pulte. The president still wants Pulte to be the head of DNI, right? He entrusted with the country's greatest secrets, the guy who weaponized federal government information in his last job, and now they want to give him the most sensitive information that our country has. Again, you just can't make this stuff up. We need to keep pushing forward until we save our democracy and our Constitution.
Saving our democracy, as you put it, Senator, obviously depends people's dedication to the Constitution, the rule of law, et cetera. You know this as well as anybody. The only entity whose polling numbers rival the low level of the presidents right now are the Democratic Party. And Democrats themselves aren't so crazy about their own party. I know you spoke about the situation in Gaza, which obviously is an important part of the rebuilding. Do your colleagues, do you get what needs to be done to have those kinds of numbers reversed and not just be the anti-Trump party?
Well, I think you're making an essential point, and I've been telling my Democratic colleagues for some time not to take that much comfort in the fact that Trump's polling numbers are very low, because the Democratic Party's poll numbers rival those Trump numbers in terms of unpopularity. I think for the midterm elections, it's pretty clear that people across the country understand that the Trump administration is the most corrupt administration we've ever witnessed in American history, that they promised they would focus on bringing down prices. In fact, prices are going up, said that they would keep us out of war. We're in a war. And that will be a referendum on those who have a monopoly on power. But beyond the midterms, the Democrats better be able to tell people what we stand for, not just what we stand against. And I've been very clear that the main thing we need to shake up is our economy, which is increasingly rigged for the very rich in the country and the biggest corporations against everybody else. And I don't think this left-right divide is the right framework to be looking through at politics these days. I really think it's, the folks who are using their concentrated economic power at the top to write and rig the rules so that everybody else gets screwed. As I say, they're the people who promote and support trickle-down economics, and then they're the people who get trickled on. And most of the people are getting trickled on. And so we need to completely revamp our tax system. Our tax system right now is designed to help people who make money off of money and penalizes people who earn a paycheck through hard work. We are in a system where we're socializing the costs of the biggest corporations, but privatizing the gains for them. So, for example, why should we be paying 1 penny to build data centers for the wealthiest corporations on the planet? Why should we be paying to have to pick up the mess, the environmental mess and fallout from the biggest polluters and biggest oil companies in the world? So, you know, the American people have for too long had to bear the costs of an unfair system, and we definitely need to shake that up big time.
So you only have 30 seconds. I know you got to go and you have work to do, but you were in New Hampshire the other day. They don't have any lakes in Maryland? What's that about? I mean, why were you in New Hampshire?
Well, look, I do believe, to the point we've been making and the conversation we've been having, the Democratic Party cannot simply say we're going to return to the pre-Trump status quo. We've got to shake things up. We have to fight for working people, not just in rhetoric, but actual policies and positions that will finally create an economy that works for everybody, not just the richest few. And so I was invited up by the Cheshire County Democratic Party, and so I said yes, and I think that they were hungry for a message that the Democratic Party needs to be shaken up and changed, and that we cannot become, you know, the party of the status quo or the pre-Trump status quo.
Hope you'll join us again soon, Senator. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much
it.
for being with us. We've been speaking on Zoom with Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen. We very much appreciate his time. Thank you again, Senator, for being with us. Up next, we're going to talk with Meredith Goldstein, Love Letters from the Boston Globe.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Cape Cod Foundation, committed to building resources to support community life on Cape Cod, including environmental conservation, arts and culture, and community development. Learn more at capecodfoundation.org. And New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, a garden destination 50 miles from Boston. Visitors can discover summer with thousands of blooms, twilight experiences, art exhibitions, and educational programs for all ages. NEBG.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, winner of 4 regional Edward R. Murrow Awards. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH, what matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're not going to be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow because the library is closed for the Juneteenth holiday, but we will be broadcasting live here in Brighton. So our show's on tomorrow. The Attorney General of the Commonwealth will be with us on Tuesday at the library from 11 to noon, and the Mayor of Boston will be with us July 8th. Hello again, Jim.
And one of the things we're going to talk about the Attorney General about is the state's highest court knocking off the income tax ballot question
big
that
deal.
she had certified. Joined now live on Zoom by phone booth expert Meredith Goldstein. That's relevant, you'll hear. She's the Boston Globe Love Letters columnist, host of the Love Letters podcast. She's got a huge event coming up on June 30th. We'll talk about it in a couple of minutes. Meredith, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Well, you know, I just thought of something today. As I'm driving in, every news story, every local news story is about the Scots. And my question is every Bostonian hooking up with a Scot in the last couple of weeks? What's going on?
I hope the answer is I hope so. I hope so. Last weekend I walked by the Haven, which is, if not the only one of the few Scottish restaurants in town in Jamaica Plain, and I was just greeted by so many friendly, wonderful people, and what handsome men. And I thought, you know, what a great thing for this city. What a great thing for Boston. What a great thing for people who like Scottish men. I mean, it's truly. I haven't thought a lot about the soccer, but I've thought a lot about the joyful spirit, and the vibes are good.
Listen to her.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also leaving city work to go into City Hall Plaza. You're just like, wait, do I live in a super fun party place? I'm so excited.
And the music, and everybody's got the accents, those great accents, and everything else, and of course the kills without the underwear. We've been talking a lot about that too.
Yeah, it's
Jim
been
has.
actually helping me remember which bands I like that are Scottish, and I've been listening to a lot of the Waterboys and acts that I've always really loved that I hadn't thought about much. So it's giving me an education and a re-education.
So one more thing before we get to June 30th. Jim ran into you. I didn't, but Jim did. I missed you at the.
At some
I
party
missed you.
recently,
I missed
yes.
you. I looked. There's nothing worse than knowing you're at a party with Marjorie and you can't find her.
That's
I was
right.
looking for you everywhere. Where is she?
I
Where
don't
is
know.
she?
I must have been in the bathroom or something. I don't
Yeah.
know where I was. But anyway, apparently you had a very important discussion
We did.
about name tags.
We did.
And I believe that is why we have a story about in favor of name tags from none other than Jamie Lee Curtis. But what happened to this interchange?
Well, I'll tell you what I said, and I think I had a moderately receptive audience, not really, but she pretended like she was, that one thing that could help sort of the connecting to other humans world is our name tags, mandatory name tags. On maybe not mandatory. People wearing name tags so that, for example, as I've said only 1,000 times, if it turns out that you see somebody who you've seen a few times in the past and maybe gotten his or her their name and you can't ask anymore, all you do is stare down sort of furtively, find out who they are, and right away by using their first name, you have a bit of a thing going. So.
Yeah, and I think this is great. I mean, I some people might not want to wear a name tag, but I would say that I really heard what you had to say because I get a lot of anxiety that I'm going to say the name wrong.
Me too.
Or I have anxiety for the other person that they won't remember my name.
Yeah.
There's like this many layered, and so why not? Now, I have been at a conference before where I should know a person's name and I'm trying to covertly look at a name tag they have. So I think it would still give away that perhaps you don't remember.
That's the problem. They need to be on your forehead, but no one's
They
ever
need to
going to
be on
wear
your
them on your
forehead.
forehead. That's where you need them because otherwise you're looking down at their shirt. And then
Yeah, you just have to say like, oh, I just wanted to see the
Yeah.
spelling of your name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's true that it was the Jamie Lee Curtis thing was apparently she demands that everybody on her set and the crew of her movies that they all wear name tags
Good for
because
her.
it's an egalitarian thing for her, right? We don't want to be they all know I'm Jamie. I don't know who these people are. I think that's great.
By the way, let me just say, when I broached this with Meredith at this party, she was not nearly as accepting of it. But my sense is she's now thinking, if all those Scottish men had name tags.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
All these people in the city would know exactly what their names are. No, I think I had to sit with it for a little bit because I thought, I think wearing a name tag suggests you want to be spoken to.
Yes.
So
That's
I
a good
do
point.
understand that there are times when I am feeling introverted, and if I'm in the office and I'm wearing a hello, my name is Meredith, and people might think, oh, like she's ready to converse, and I just want to like sit at my desk and eat my Skittles and be left alone. So there is, but maybe that's it too, right? Of throwing on that name tag when you're ready to engage.
So what's going on June 30th?
So as I have talked about here, there is a big phone booth at the Boston Public Library for love letters. And on June 30th, we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to play some of the best messages. This is a 6 p.m. event. It's free at the library. And the cool guest we're having is Mary Beth Norton, who's a historian who wrote a book all about an advice column, a community advice column in the 1600s. So people have been in each other's business for centuries and giving each other sometimes solicited, sometimes unsolicited advice. So she and I are going to talk about everything from centuries ago advice to where we are now to the idea that a phone booth is a retro old school concept. So it's a great night. I always say people always forget there's a bar in the library.
Yeah.
I
Great
plan
bar.
to be there at 5:00 and then the event starts for free at 6.
Beautiful. And how do people find out?
If you just go to bpl.org and click the 30th, it's at the Central Branch, and please, come alone, bring friends. We're all going to be there.
It's a Tuesday night, by the way, for those
Yeah.
who are not calendar.
And for those who are going to then, just go away on Wednesday, you can just count that as the start of a vacation.
Exactly. So RuPaul's got this new movie. It's probably a takeoff on an airplane, except it's about a train. Stop that train. You had an interview with Jujubee, one of the stars, and we're going to play a little sound. Here is a clip of the first one, Jubilee Meredith speaking on Meredith's Love Letters podcast for the Boston Globe. Here's Jubilee.
To be a drag artist, you really have to have, and forgive me for saying this, the balls or the ganas to do it. And nobody could tell you that you can't.
So tell us about this interview and about the movie.
So this is a local drag queen, goes by Jujubee, but in real life name is Airline, like Airline, a Laotian name. It was so much fun to talk to a drag queen out of drag who just has had regular dating experiences. So in drag, Jujubee is over the top, incredible eyelashes, hair. And in a podcast office, talking about an ex-boyfriend is, just kind of shy and messing up like the rest of us. So I think there were a lot of metaphors about when you perform in a relationship versus be authentically yourself. There were also metaphors in that he's in a movie about a train that won't stop running, and he kind of never knew when to break up with boyfriends. So the train just kept going on, and it would be just fine for a really long time. So I just love the range of guests we have, because it can be somebody I've never heard of who lives in another state who is very shy, and another person who is performing on stage in Jujubee drag. And we all have the same problems at the end of the day.
Well, speaking about not knowing when to break up, there was another great column, your column, Love Letters, Boston Globe, about this couple moving in together. The guy did not want to move in together 3 years in. That is a fraught point in relationships, I think.
It's really hard, and it can honestly be the moment where it's like, well, if we're not going to do that, what are we doing? But I do think that letter brought up a wonderful point, which is that, especially as we get older, if there are resources there, a lot of people prefer to live apart or close by.
How big is that, by the way? The only time I had ever heard of that was when Mia Farrow and the man we don't name used to live on opposite sides of Central
Robert
Park.
Parker, the great detective
Oh, I
writer.
didn't know. They did?
Yeah, they lived in a different part of the same house, right?
I have heard that, here's when I hear it, when people have the money to do it. Like what did I always used to say, like, what if I built like a castle and I had a bridge going to, it's like, that would be fun, right? But at the end of the day, whether not most people cannot afford that, and partnership, part of the bonus of partnership is to be able to share resources and expensive. But even if you want, even if you have all the resources in the world, you might want to be next to somebody. It's just nice to have the option of walking away.
Well, stay on that for a second. I'm embarrassed to say I hadn't thought about the money aspect. But how about even in the same place, like Marjorie was just mentioning, separate bedrooms, and then obviously when you want to not be in a separate bedroom, you're not in a separate bed. How big is that? How big is that?
More people have separate bedrooms than we talk about. And that might not be called, that's your room. It's more, that's your bed. Like people call it sleep divorces. I don't like to call it that, because I think it's always been the case that if somebody snores and somebody doesn't, sometimes people go to bed together, and then their routine is that they separate into rooms. And I think that's actually pretty common. Even if they share a room, there might be a second unit where you can say, okay, I'm going over there. I more hear about people who are no longer romantically involved, who are still in the same home for affordability reasons. So again, the money seems to be very linked to how we do real estate. But I always think about an interview I keep seeing over and over where Matthew McConaughey talks about not wanting a king size bed because he wants to be really close with his wife. And that man can afford 6 beds. And, some people really just want to be close. So I do think that moment of, are we going to live together? Are we going to combine lives? Everybody has to be on the same page, or else.
Why do you have a cow on the wall, by the way? Why is there a cow up here?
My late great uncle was a painter for a hobby, and I recently got this cow painting, and I feel like because of that, I'm related to this cow. This is my great uncle cow. So it has replaced a much more floral looking, but I feel connected to this cow.
I like it a lot.
Okay, we talked about this on the radio a couple of weeks ago, but you did a whole podcast on it. This issue of bridesmaids feeling overwhelmed by the cost of being a bridesmaid, and you interviewed a book author about it. So tell us about this. It's becoming a 4-figure endeavor.
Yes, and it has long been. I will look back in my early 20s, and I am about to turn 49, and I was spending thousands that I did not have in my early 20s. Yeah. So, if you consider dress, showers, travel, gifts, this can add up. And not just the cost, the emotional cost. This is what are the expectations in this role? So this woman, Rahama Wale, she goes by Rue, and Rue told me I quit. She wrote a big essay about how she never wanted to be a bridesmaid again. And it was quite controversial because it really called it what it was, which is a job, it's work, it's a position. So her big advice is if somebody says, hey, oh my God, you're one of my best friends, do you want to be my bridesmaid? You're allowed to say no. And you're allowed to say, I'm going to think about it for a day. We say yes immediately because we're so honored, and yet some of us can't fulfill those duties, whether it be the expense or the time.
Well, can you go to the other end of that for a second? It's one thing for the person who can't afford it or finds it offensive, even if they love the person, to say no. How about the ask? I mean, really.
It's funny because you're so right. Her message is really for wedding parties and brides. And I don't want to gender it so much, but it often is a bridesmaid issue. To say, what am I really asking? To say to your friend, and by asking this, here's what it would look like. So there are no surprises, and not to be offended if somebody says, I want to be there for you, but can I read a poem? And that's what I can do. There are so many roles to include someone in a wedding.
Well, I also thought what was a great idea is to say, listen, I can only spend X dollars. If it's going to be more than that, I can't participate in the whole thing. I can't go to the pre-wedding party out in Arizona or something like that. I have a limit. That seems so reasonable to me.
It does. And it's all about expectations and having these conversations early, like, what does that mean to you? What would that be? Here's what I can do. Here's what you can do. Here's how much I care, even though I can't do the following. One of the issues is we're often asked to do this when we're young, and we might not have the communication maturity to say, this is making me uncomfortable. So it asks a lot of everyone. And this is why it's up to older friends to help younger friends as they ask, as they accept, as they reject. So we're tasked with this.
We have to end where we began. An anonymous texter says, sadly, I can't read everything in this. Jim, Scots are hairy. There's something else that I can't read. Smart and kind. Best kept secret. And you can probably figure out what's in the middle there.
Begins with an H.
Begins with an H, ends with a G. But we're not reading it because we're sort of like our jobs. Okay?
I mean, it might not be a secret anymore.
It may not be.
Yeah.
Hey, Meredith, thanks
a
as always.
lot. I hope June 30th. How do people find out again?
bpl.org, click the 30th for events.
Great.
Fabulous. Thanks.
Thank you
Good
very
luck with
much.
that. It's great.
Meredith
Bye.
Goldstein, great love letters columnist from the Boston Globe, and the author of the proprietress, whatever she is,
Whatever the hell she
of
is.
the Love Letters podcast, which is also fantastic. If you're a bridesmaid, you got bridesmaid issues, you should listen to the one about the bridesmaids. It's great. Okay, coming up after this quick
Can I
break.
just say one thing?
What?
I'm looking at the dedication of the Obama Library, and it's great. In the box, the Obamas, the Bushes, the Clintons. Who's not there? Let me see. Which president? Oh, that's right. The Bidens are there.
Yeah.
Who's not there?
Donald Trump.
And Melania Trump.
They
What a
weren't
shame.
invited.
Okay.
Oh, well. Maybe she was and he wasn't. I don't know. Anyway, coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk with Brendan Patrick Hughes, Divine Intervention. This wonderful podcast that just won a prestigious Peabody Award with all the big stars. We're going to speak with Hughes and his mother, Marianne, who's central to the story about Boston Catholics, nuns, and priests standing up against the Vietnam War, anti-war protesters. That is next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Sometimes the story you need to hear isn't the one dominating the news. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III, host of The Curiosity Desk. Our mission? To be your guide through it all. From how does it work to how did we get here? From compound interest to, well, compounds, like molecules and stuff. We'll follow our curiosity wherever it leads. Join us on the journey, weekdays at 1 here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Modern Pest Services, providing integrated pest management for Boston homes and businesses. Modern Pest uses a prevention-first approach to seasonal pests to help target the source of the problem. Learn more at modernpest.com. And the Museum of Fine Arts, presenting Framing Nature, Gardens, and Imagination. This new exhibition of beloved and never-before-seen treasures centers gardens across time, place, and cultures. More at mfa.org.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are not at the library tomorrow. The library's closed for Juneteenth. We will be live from Brighton. In April of last year, we welcomed a mother and son into Studio 3. Marianne Hughes was the first executive director of the Interaction Institute for Social Change. She and I may have worked together in the past, too. In the 70s, she was associated with a group of nuns and priests trying to sabotage the Vietnam War. She fell in love with one priest, and decades later, their son, filmmaker, podcaster extraordinaire Brendan Patrick Hughes, would make a podcast about their love story in the larger Catholic anti-war movement.
That 50 years ago, radical nuns in combat boots and wild-haired priests became cat burglars in order to sabotage the draft. What if I told you they got so good at it, they started trading blows with J. Edgar Hoover?
And now, in April of this year, that podcast called Divine Intervention won a Peabody Award in radio and podcasting. Here's that same man, Brendan Patrick Hughes, a little piece of his acceptance speech.
These gonzo young patriots loved their country so much that they were willing to go to jail to rescue it from the mediocre men who had overrun the federal government and driven us into an unnecessary war.
Sounds like it could have been
Yeah,
made
it sounds
this
like
week.
very familiar.
Hey, Brendan, congratulations. Marianne, great to see you both.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, congratulations, Brendan and Marianne. Congratulations to you, too, as mom and star of the podcast, by the way. But let me be a little starstruck for a minute. I'm reading these other people that were there out there. You had Jimmy Kimmel Live, Ben Affleck. He gave you the award. Heated rivalry, the thing that got a lot of millions of Americans all excited about hockey. What was the scene, Brendan?
It was the most surreal night of my entire life, and I never wanted it to end. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, there was a big soiree, we walked in, and there were celebrities everywhere. Nathan Fielder, Amy Poehler, all these. The list goes on. It's bananas. My personal hero, Tony Gilroy, who was the creator of Andor, was there, and I got to meet him and shake his hand. Jad Abumrad was there. We talked. We exchanged emails. He's just as nice as everyone says. It was crazy. And in fact, we sat down for like the dinner portion, and immediately they tapped me on the shoulder and pulled me backstage. And I actually felt immediately, as soon as I was in sort of a dingy hallway, I felt much more at home than in the glitz and the glamour. And we're standing there, we're waiting to go on stage, and suddenly Jimmy Kimmel is standing directly to my left, leaning against the wall. And we talked for like 10 minutes. He's a total man of the people. Guillermo came up. It was crazy. Then
Guillermo was there?
It was crazy.
Oh,
yeah.
I love Guillermo.
Listen to Marjorie. Talk about groupie. Why did Affleck introduce you, by the
I think because he has the bona fides of a Boston radical.
Kid? Yeah.
Yeah. He knew he's so on the level in terms of my cohort was called Speaking Truth to Power. And there were several of us in that cohort, including Jimmy Kimmel and some reporters that made incredible pieces of work. And so I think he was right on that wavelength.
Hey, mother, Marianne, were you invited to the festivities, or what's the deal?
No, because someone had to take care of Oscar.
Who would Oscar be?
His son, and his mother was away, and it really was. This was Brendan's night. It was perfect as it was. Perfect.
But but in all seriousness, it was Brendan's night, and the thing is brilliant, Divine Intervention. If you haven't listened, you got to do it. It also is a celebration of a critical, not only an important part of history, but an important part of history that maybe a lot of us should think about reliving in 2026. So that had to mean a lot to you beyond just your kid winning a Peabody, right?
Oh my God. Yes. Just, you know what, the whole thing, do you remember the Mark Twain quote? It's something like, fiction needs to be believable, reality is under no such constraints.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's
this
a good one.
Entire experience is exactly that, from beginning to end.
Of course, go ahead.
No, what I was going to say about what it's brought up for me in that larger question you're asking, Jim.
Yeah.
I've thought so much about how the Catholic left anti-war movement, like almost all resistance movements, is really rooted in something so much deeper. And it was so informed and enriched. Is that a word?
That's close enough. We know what
enriched by some of the greatest thinkers and philosophers and theologians of its time. And it guided it. It gave us language. And that's our language now is so thin. It's like thin gruel. Sports metaphors and corporate lingo and all that.
Okay, hold on for a second.
Yeah.
Marianne is going all intellectual on us now. I mean, let's get down to brass tacks. You were a scandalous young woman. You met a priest, and priests are supposed to be celibate and unmarried. You said, that's my guy. He left the priesthood to marry you and produce Brendan over there. You were like a little scandal. And we heard all the great actual recordings of your parents' wedding vows that your father presided over. So, I mean, she's a grandmother now, but she was quite the gal back in the day, Brendan.
She really was. She was she was quite a badass.
That's right. She really
Hey, Brendan, I should have asked you this when you guys were in a while ago, and we've heard it for the first time, but Marjorie and I were talking about this today, which I'm sure you thought about. You didn't know your father that well, obviously. He died young. You were young. You obviously know him far better now than you knew him ever before. What was that like in the multi-year making of this deal?
I'm so glad you asked that, Jim. This whole project was kind of a secret opportunity for me to get to know him as a fellow grown-up now. I'm older by many years than he ever got to. He died when he was 41. And now I sort of feel like I've gotten to know him as a contemporary and who he was and how he moved through rooms, how he had meetings, how he disrupted things, very gently, humorously, but thoroughly. I know him now, and because he died when I was 6, and I think a lot of people carry their fathers, especially those of us who've lost theirs, with a certain amount of mythology. And this was an opportunity to kind of pierce that mythology a little bit and make it real and become friends with him.
What kind of feedback have you gotten in general? Not from those on the periphery or intimately involved, but from people for whom this was a total enlightenment. They didn't know about any of this. What kind of reaction did you get to the podcast?
It's really been stunning and wonderful. I get these incredible emails, probably twice a week. I get a long email from someone that I don't know that has just finished it and really needed to hear this story right now. I think because of the hellscape that awaits us every time we start to doom scroll instead of sleep, people need to hear a story about these brave young souls that found a way to disrupt the callousness of power. And that has been the biggest surprise for me, is how timely the story was and how resonant it is with people who are looking anywhere for a shred of hope.
Mm-hmm. If many people know about the Walk for Hunger, thousands and thousands and thousands of people have donated to it and walked to it. You and your husband, Marianne, you started that years ago.
The first day I met Patrick, I had been at a demonstration with Chrissy and JoJo. It was Kent State and the Cambodian invasion that week. And a friend had said, oh, you have to go meet Father Hughes. And I went across to the Paula Center and I asked, for Father Hughes. And Patrick came in the room and, hand to God, it was just this instant, unbelievable, overwhelming connection. And he was organizing. It was the first Boston Walk for Hunger. There had been one in Quincy the year before, and that's how he had kind of tested it out. And this was the first Boston one. And we went up to the organizing room. It would be like being in a press room. Everybody was working and calling and all that stuff. And Patrick said, as a joke, I never told you guys I was married with 2 kids, right?
Pretty good.
And there you were.
Hey.
We were married 2 years practically to the day later.
Brendan, this is not the end of Divine Intervention from what we read. There's a next chapter for this. Is that true? What are you doing?
Yes, I certainly hope so. I've been tasked by my agents, my wonderful agents at UTA, United Talent Agency, are taking up the mantle to try and get this adapted into a television show. And they've asked me to write a treatment.
So who plays you, Marianne, in the TV thing?
Oh my God, help us. Oh my God.
Help us, listen.
Yeah. Well, for people who haven't heard it, I'm embarrassed to say I grew up around here. I didn't know about this great anti-war movement by these Catholic priests and nuns, all these scenes right there at Park Street Church and right at Paula Center, right down from the State House. So it's great. Their bravery, their courage, it's great, and you capture it so well.
I hope you take this the right way. Not only are we happy for you, we're really proud of you, Brendan. This is really spectacular and so well deserved. It's insane. Congratulations.
Wow. Thank you.
Couldn't have done it without Marianne, by the way. But go ahead. What?
I would like to confirm for your listeners, I heard your lovely congratulations message earlier. And I would like to confirm that there's a direct line from when I was making copies for you at the Tax Equity Alliance for Massachusetts, the sage wisdom I gathered from your leadership to this moment.
That is very kind, but I have to say, honestly, you were not that good at copying, to be perfectly honest. It may have helped you, but it wasn't doing that much for the organization.
Okay.
Brendan,
Thank
Marianne,
you very much.
We are so thrilled we can't
to you
see
both.
straight.
Thank
Be
you
well,
so
you
much.
guys.
See you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've been speaking.
You got to hear this thing. It is
it's great.
Brilliant.
It's great.
Brilliant.
It's great. It's so well done, and it's all. It's check it out. Divine Intervention. We have been speaking with Marianne Hughes, the first executive director of the Interaction Institute for Social Change, and her son, Brendan Patrick Hughes, filmmaker and podcaster. You can find all the episodes of the award-winning podcast Divine Intervention from iHeart Podcasts and wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, coming up after this quick break, it is our fan favorite weekly segment, Who is the A-hole? This week, you decide whether it's an indecisive mother and daughter holding up the butcher counter line, the deli line, you're trying to get the sliced turkey, or the other patrons giving them not-so-subtle hints to hurry up. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy, listening to BPR 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Most museums have the old do not touch rule, but one museum in Philadelphia is changing that. Their goal? To help visitors who are blind experience history through touch.
It felt like the way we learn, the way we move in space and time was thought about. For once, I felt like I was not an afterthought.
Join us on this immersive tour on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Polar Beverages, family made since 1882. Founded in Worcester, Massachusetts by Dennis Crowley, offering a range of flavored seltzers, mixers, and dry sodas. Product information and locations at polarbeverages.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing helpful digital tools, world-class providers, and coverage that help you live in the moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH, Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're not at the library tomorrow. The library's closed for Juneteenth. We are open for business, though. We'll be live broadcasting from Brighton. This week's Am I the A-hole scenario comes to us from the Reddit thread of the same name, and it centers around something we have all experienced. An impatient person in line. The issue here, the butcher counter at the supermarket. A mother and daughter can't make up their minds on what to get, hemming and hawing while they hold up everybody behind them in the line. They spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is, negotiating with the butcher about sausages. Are they too spicy? Can he take the skin off? On and on. A bystander, the people standing right behind in line, happened to mutter, "Jesus Christ." And the mother whips around and says, "This is a counter. It takes time. Saying Jesus is rude." So the lines are open at 877-301, call or text. Who's really the rude one here? The slowpoke mother and daughter duo who can't make up their minds about what meat tube to get at the butcher counter, and as a result are holding everybody up, or the a-holes, the people waiting in line, tapping their toes, muttering under their breath, hoping these women will get their damn sausages and get out of here, and saying something about it too under the breath. 877-301 8970. Who's the a-hole, Marjorie? The people taking forever to place their
they're
order,
the a-hole.
or the rude whisperer?
No, it's absolutely the people there at the counter. I mean, can't you relate to this? How many times you've been at the deli counter and there's a really long line and somebody's up there saying, I want 2 slices of the roast beef. No, I want it thin. You got to make it thinner. And I want a quarter of a pound of the turkey. And then do I want the pasta salad or do I want the potato salad?
Exactly.
Wait, no, let's go back. I want the pasta potato salad.
And there are 40 people
yeah, there are 40
behind
them. And they go on and on and on. Yes, they are obnoxious. Can you imagine telling somebody you can't make up your mind between the sweet sausage and the spicy sausage? Do I want sweet? Do I want spicy? They go back and forth.
And then at the end say, please take the skin off.
skins
Take the skin off yourself.
Exactly. Take the skin off yourself. You
Can I
pain
tell
in
you
the
something?
neck.
A lot of listeners, when they out in the world, Ryan, encounter somebody and they
Mm-hmm.
say, you purposely take different sides on these issues. We're on the same side of this one. My attitude is not only that the malingerers, is that the right word?
Malingerers, yes, that is.
Are the a-holes, but you have an obligation to badmouth them if you're behind them in line. Not only are you not an a-hole, juice it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Say how outrageous and selfish and self-centered their behavior is. Make them uncomfortable.
I think people do it on purpose.
What do you mean?
They just passive
To show how
aggressive.
important they are or
Passive
something? Yeah.
aggressive. They love the fact that they can hold up this line of 15 people. Oh, don't forget, please! I need 3 more pieces of pastrami. I mean, they'll just be there forever.
Can I tell you what my position is?
What is your
Not
position,
on
Jim?
sausages, but you touched on something I
Yes.
hadn't thought about. I don't think you should be able to order less than a half of a pound of anything. Now, I mean, I understand there's an economic issue here, but if you go to Market Basket, everything's so cheap anyway. When you order, you know what a quarter pound is? It's
Nothing.
like 3 slices.
Exactly.
Forget it. Don't eat it.
It's not thin enough.
Exactly.
It's not thin enough.
Boy, you were angry today.
Because
You've lived through
I've
this
encountered this
experience.
many times. And you know what it really is upsetting? If the line isn't clear. If it's like people mulling about by the deli counter.
Well, you have
So you don't
numbers at
know-
Market Basket.
Well,
You have
not every
number.
place has numbers. So you could be first, and
I hate that.
or you could be fourth, and people jockey for position. They try to sneak in front of you. I mean, it's really
Can I
bad.
also say one thing? Marjorie didn't comment when I said
Mm-hmm.
I think it's incumbent upon the people behind to be rude towards them.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks Marjorie's so nice. I'm telling you, when you piss her off, if I can say that, particularly in a setting like
Okay.
this,
Yeah.
you'll be heard. Is
Be
that
heard.
a fair? Is that
That's
not a
right.
fair?
I
You would say something
sometimes-
to this mother and daughter, wouldn't you? Tell the truth.
I don't know if I'd say something to mother and daughter, but I would really be stewing about it. I'll tell you that. I would really be stewing about it. Listen to this. This is an anonymous texture. This person is so
Yeah.
right. Makes me think of being behind the oldest person you've ever seen, buying 15 separate,
separate numbers,
lottery
right.
tickets in front of you while you're just trying to pay for your gas. The sausage ladies are definitely the a-holes. 877
Sausage ladies, I like
Sausage
that.
ladies. 877-301-8970 is the number. 877-301-8970. Okay. Oh,
Read Seth. That's a good one. I can
oh
understand
my
this.
God. I've scheduled an emergency meeting with my shrink on that introduction.
Well, it's true because everybody has lived through this and it causes colossal anxiety. By the way, I know what people are thinking, that I'm the kind of a-hole who would stand in front.
Somebody said they
Self-
spent
what
30
they
minutes
say-
behind you at Jim at the
No,
Whole
that is,
Foods
I'm
bar.
sorry, not true. Because there's not a line at the hot bar. So that's not true. I am very sensitive to not holding up other people. I really am. And occasionally I will not get something I want or pass up something
Yeah.
with a cashier. It's just wrong.
They
It's
didn't even
wrong.
turn around and apologize.
well,
say,
except to yell
I'm
at the-
sorry, I'm taking so long. I was at the Star Market the other day and somebody couldn't find their credit card. And you know what they did? They just turned around and said, I'm sorry, I'm holding you up. And you say, don't worry about it. But I mean, they just, it was like they had all their
You know what
order.
the butcher should have participated in this and said,
Absolutely.
you should take this spicy sausage and put it where the sun don't shine. No, you can't. You don't say that on radio. I'm sorry. Let's go to
Okay.
Kathleen. Where's Kathleen? I can't read this. Onset. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Hi. What do you
Hi.
think?
I have been saying for a long time now there is no longer any such thing as a simple, straightforward transaction. You get on a checkout line and you've got people arguing with the cashier about whether the coupon still works or it works on what they're buying. They can't find their credit card. They don't even pull it out until it's time to pay.
Exactly.
And you get the people like at the deli counter. It makes me insane. I am in despair over the fact that you cannot have a simple transaction anymore.
Kathleen, you are spectacular. Let me ask you another question, which I was too embarrassed to raise, but since you're so passionate, my view is if you're in line at a cashier and someone tries to pay by check, they should be hauled away by the police. Do you share that perspective?
That was one of the worst. Thank God no one does it anymore.
Kathleen,
I agree.
You were great. Thanks for the call.
I totally agree.
I love her attitude. That was great, Kathleen. Thank you so much.
Okay, here's Peter from Mystic, Connecticut. My favorite are customers who ask the person behind the counter about fish or something. Is it fresh?
Oh, I can't. I can't.
What do you think they're going to say? No, it's rotten. It smells. And then this other person says the ladies holding up the counter are 100% the jerks. But they said it's fine to ask a question, but the person behind the counter should have said, I'm mixing up texts here. But the person behind the counter said, you know what? When you make up your mind, you let me know.
That is brilliant.
And because
so they're sort of the a-hole. They should have taken charge of this.
They're semi-a-holic.
Exactly.
That's right. Let's go to Marie in New Hampshire. Thank you for calling, Marie.
Hi, Marie.
Hi. I think that really you have to consider that people might be asking questions for health reasons, and maybe they were having somebody over for dinner than health reasons. And I really just think that you should have thought that there might have been more to it than you think. And somebody saying, Jesus Christ, that was rude of that person. There really could have been a reason, but I do agree
that there
should be more help at the counter.
Okay, Marie, what's the health reason for taking the skin off? There's no health reason for that.
Well, no, maybe you can't eat the... Yeah, you maybe can't eat the skin.
Then you take the skin off yourself. You don't have the person behind the
Marie,
counter.
can I tell you, ordinarily, I might even agree with you. However, the detail we didn't have time to share is when they ordered 5 sausages. We didn't say this. And they wanted all 5 sweet. They only had 4 sweet. So the butcher offered them, do you want a spicy one for the 5th? And they went back and forth repeatedly. Okay, no, we won't. No, I don't. Yeah, how spicy? So the reality is, I think we'd agree on this, Marie. When you get to the front of the line, you got to know exactly what you want and be ready to, in a disciplined fashion, place your order. Would you agree?
Okay, good. Well, you know what? I have a son that has dairy issues, peanut issues, wheat issues, sunflower seed issues. So you just don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really have to ask.
Okay. Well, you're a better person than we, Marie, obviously. Now, let me just say this. This is dangerous, what we're about to get into.
Yep.
Our team has typed us the same note they type on every discussion we have. They happen to have sound of a fight that happened at another butcher takeout line. Now, trust me, this sound has nothing to do with a butcher, but we're going to humor them. We're going to play it. Here is allegedly the sound of a fight that happened at a butcher takeout line. Here it is. I can't even. I can't. I'm not even going to explain what that is. If you listen to the show, you know what it is.
I think we've heard this more than we've heard the thing about sniffing glue from
But can
the
I tell you
airplane.
something? It's pretty good sound.
It is pretty good
Let's
sound.
go to Elizabeth in Gloucester. Hi, Elizabeth. Welcome. Who's the a-hole?
Yes. Well, can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
we
perfectly.
can.
Sort of.
Okay, hi. I'm sorry. I think we're all forgetting about the third party, which is the customer service person. And there is, I worked in retail for years, and some people, there's something called the clerk syndrome, and people go out and just for the hell of it will give a waitress or a retail person or a butcher a hard time.
My father used to do
around.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
And there's
totally
a real
right.
control. It's it's an ego thing. It's a control thing. It's this poor butcher think of how patient he was. And, the customer's always right, as they say. Of course, they're not. But, I mean, you have to, do what they ask you. And it can be really degrading. But I'm sure there are some people that wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to go out and abuse the clerk,
No, I think that's totally true.
That is brilliant addition.
I mean, when I used to wait
Thank you.
when I was a waitress, I was supposed to say wait on tables. Now there were people definitely came out to dinner just to give you a hard time, and the harder the time they get, the more saccharine.
My
they will
father
become.
totally got off on it. We'd go to
Oh,
a nice restaurant.
So sorry, the water is too cold. I'm sorry. We'll go back and get you some warmer water. The glass isn't filled up enough of said water. I mean, people are unbelievable.
This is an important point. Anonymous texter, actually, Boar's Head at Stop and Shop pre-packages certain things like honey maple turkey, and
do it
thank
lots
God.
of places.
Well, there's a difference. At Market Basket in Somerville, they pre-package, and it's the exact same price as the price if you wait in line. However, if the company that makes the thing, like Boar's Head, pre-packages it, not the store itself, it's often more expensive per pound, Marjorie, than the price at the butcher counter.
Penny counts.
Deli counter. Well, it does. I mean, it does.
But then, of course, if it's pre-packaged.
Until the Strait of Hormuz is totally open with no tolls, I don't want to pay an extra 17 cents for my bologna.
Yeah, okay.
Do
877.
you ever roll up, by the way? One of the great joys that I have, I know this will really surprise you, is occasionally I go for the unhealthy thing. And I'll get, let's say, bologna, which literally is like a mini death sentence. You get like a quarter pound of bologna. I just said you shouldn't order a quarter pound. And you get a quarter pound of some crappy cheese.
Yeah, American
And when
cheese.
you get to the car, you wrap them inside each other into like a little, like a thing there.
Yeah.
And then you pop them right in as you're driving. Is
No,
there anything better than that? I mean, think about that.
I remember when I was young, I would make an hors d'oeuvre, roll bologna around cream cheese.
Oh man, that's like erotic, isn't it?
That's what we
I don't
all
even know if
thought.
you can mention
I
that
was
on the
well
radio.
known for my erotic hors d'oeuvres.
Really? No, that's great.
It's disgusting. Lee in Lincoln.
Listen to this, Jenna Rayham. Wait a second, Lee.
What?
I'm a hairstylist. When I deposit, this is Jenna Rayham. Did I say that? I did. When I deposit my tips at the ATM and it's taking too long, I get nervous guilt. I feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
And end the transaction and loop back around to the back of the line. I'm
'Cause
raising
Jen
my hand.
is
I
a
totally
lovely
agree.
person. She's a lovely person.
Good for you.
These people wanted this. Take the skin off. Take the skin off. The spicy one, the sweet one. They were doing it on purpose to antagonize everybody.
Can I
behind
tell you
the
something?
line.
I have it on good authority. I couldn't confirm it by Showtime that the mother and daughter wanted Kilmar Abrego Garcia deported to that prison.
They did.
In El Salvador.
They did. That's right. They were the ones that said all these terrible lies about him.
They
He's
fed
a
those to
child
Christy
molester.
Nome or
He's
Pam Bondi or one of those fired women. Lee and Lincoln, I'm sorry I interrupted you. Welcome to the show. Hi.
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 Hi. You said hi.
Can
Hi
you
to
hear
you.
me? Yes,
oh,
we
yeah.
can.
Hi. Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I find it really annoying when somebody has a really complicated order when there's a line. But there's a culture at Zabar's in New York City where people have the most insane long orders with the most incredibly specific requests of whatever they're ordering. And everybody stands very peacefully in line because they know that that's going to be every single person in line is going to be like that.
Well, let me just tell you, Lee,
just go
as
ahead
someone
and wait.
who used to go to Zabar's every Saturday night when I lived on the Upper West Side, if you go to the dictionary and look up a-hole, it's got a picture of a customer at Zabar's. I mean, I was one of them, the biggest.
But it's all of it.
They are the most self-absorbed a-holes.
That's it. You're making a mistake going there.
I know, but it was fabulous and insanely expensive. Lee, thank you. By the way, Zabar's, you forget. Front page story in the New York Times about 15 years ago. The bagel place shut down across the street.
Okay.
Zabar's, the front page of the New York Times about 15 years ago. We did segments on it at the old radio station. The most expensive thing at the deli counter was lobster salad. Some scientist or something did an analysis, and the lobster was not lobster.
It was crab or
at the most
something.
expensive deli in New York City.
It was a national scandal.
It was like a national scandal.
They had to arrest them, I think, and take them off.
They should have, but they didn't.
Now, a texter is saying that the woman that was concerned about the health issues is if someone is concerned about health issues, what the hell are they doing buying all those sausage?
Responding to that earlier woman.
Responding to
Well,
that.
I mean, be a little sensitive. Her son has a whatever allergy. Be a little nicer.
Sausage
than you
allergy?
are.
I've never heard of that.
Sausage skin allergy. He's got a lot of people have. By the way, do you not love slicing the skin off yourself? That is also very satisfying in deep ways. I don't know why. And then the meat sort of pops out of the thing. Am I expressing this in a way that is not?
Oh, Jim, I hate to tell you, the show's almost
I'm
over
telling
here.
you, I'm just getting gone. Trust me, this is really an incredibly
In other words, it's
important
like
segment.
sausage skin Bologna wrapped around cream cheese and Q-tips.
That's Q-tips. We have not done an eargasm segment in years, and it's time that we do that. Again, now sadly, we're out of time.
We are out of time.
So call Marjorie and you can continue the conversation.
Thank you very much for tuning in to our show today. And thanks for keeping up with us 24/7. Well, I don't know if people do that, but we have our podcast. Or check out our TikTok page, Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're not going to be at the Boston Public Library. We're going to be here, though, broadcasting as usual. The library's closed because it's Juneteenth. We're going to do our Juneteenth show in Brighton with Bay State Banner publisher Ron Mitchell, Marita Rivera, the former executive director of the Museum of African American
Used to
History.
work here, by the way.
She did. She was a big deal here, Jim.
She was.
For a press play. Plus, meeting maven Sue O'Connell and live music with women in world jazz and WCRB's Julia Marcus on her exclusive interview with John Baptiste. We got to see him.
Oh my God, was that great?
Yes. Okay. Our crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, Ariana Gonzalez. Additional support from Jack Siciliano. Our stream today is Colin Cockrell and Patrick Lally. Thanks to them. Our engineer, John LeClaw Parker.
Thank you.
Thanks to him. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. Stay
You see
tuned to the
that-
Curiosity Desk.
Yeah,
It's going to be...
he's got one of our favorite
Yeah,
guests on.
BU's Joan Donovan on the world's foremost deepfake. She's throwing up.
No. On the world's, there's a story in the paper. This deepfake expert, they say throwing up his hands
because he
on
can't
AI.
tell.
It's a great story.
Yeah, I can't tell which
Joan's
ones are
gonna
real
talk
and which
about
ones
that.
aren't. We're in big trouble, Jim. Okay, that's the Curiosity Desk.
She
and
gave
then,
us a little beaver pin the
She
other
did.
day for the beaver emoji that she's known
Do you
for.
want to say about your emotional attachment to that?
No, it's not like the bologna and the cheese or taking the skin off the thing. I mean, by the way, if you think I'm exaggerating, get a sausage yourself. Take it home and slowly and gently.
We have the meats.
Well, a variation on that.
De-skin it?
De-skin it.
Okay.
Slowly, by the way, is the key.
Chloe, oh my God,
Slowly,
Jim.
oh
Jad Bowen is on it too. He's going to have Catherine T. Morris of BAMS Fest to talk about Momentum, a 5-day celebration of black art, music, culture, and enterprise all across Greater Boston.
Joan Donovan also, in addition to talking about that, is going to explain why there are 12 eggs, why you buy them by the dozen. That's going to happen today. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan.
See
Thank
ya.
you for tuning in. Hope
Bye.
you have a great afternoon. Hope you can tune in tomorrow. Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart. And Classic Harbor Line, offering a range of cruises for families, corporate gatherings, and sightseeing day sails throughout the summer in Boston. More at classichairborline.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, well, out on the World Wide Web, it is getting harder and harder to separate the real from the deeply fake. It's kind of like the Matrix, but way less cool. And now, even the world's foremost deepfake expert is sounding alarms about how far the technology has come. Then, for most of our senses, sight, hearing, we have a pretty clear understanding of how our body and brain collect and process outside information. Now, for decades, scientists thought smell was too complicated to trace in this way. That is, until now. They're calling it a long-lost map. And you've been continuing to send in some incredible curiosity questions, and as always, a lot of them have to do with words, which we love. If you ever wondered where the term dust bunny or bubbla came from, this one's for you. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The U.S. has signed a preliminary deal with Iran that extends their ceasefire for 60 days after President Trump withdrew the United States from the 2015 nuclear accord with Iran in his first term. Questions persist over whether 60 days will be enough time to agree on the terms for ending their war. For Iran, that includes sanctions relief. For the U.S., assurances Iran abandons nuclear weapons ambitions. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance.
The nuclear weapons program is destroyed. It is gone. If the Iranians decided tomorrow to build a nuclear weapon, they simply don't have the capacity in order to do that. What we're trying to ensure is they don't rebuild that capacity, not just a year from now, 2 years from now, but many, many years from now, so that our children never have to worry about a state sponsor of terrorism having a nuclear weapon.
Vance leading the White House press briefing today. Two researchers at MIT say they believe they have uncovered how a top-secret Russian missile actually flies. NPR's Jeff Brumfield says Moscow has fired the missile at Ukraine.
In October, Russia launched what it said was a nuclear-powered missile. The missile flew for almost 15 hours, far longer than a regular missile could. Jake Hekla is a researcher at MIT. He says nuclear-powered flight
is something that is possible, but wildly expensive and very dangerous.
Hekla and his colleague Scott Kemp analyzed the missile. They believe it's sucking air directly through its nuclear core and spewing radioactivity as it flies.
As a result, anyone living near is at enormous risk, potentially.
And the missile isn't all that useful, he says. Despite being nuclear-powered, it's relatively slow-moving and easy to shoot down. Jeff Brumfield, NPR News.
Former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama open a new chapter on Chicago's South Side.
To dream the impossible dream.
Grammy-winning artist Jennifer Hudson among the celebrities and political dignitaries who've turned out today for the dedication of the Obama Presidential Center. Here's NPR's Don Gagne.
It's traditional for former presidents to create a library to house records and documents from their presidency and to highlight their time in the White House. The Obama Center is different. First off, it's not a presidential library, the logic being that records from the Obama era were digital and are accessible online. There's a museum, but the center also features a branch of the Chicago Public Library. There's ample park space, even a regulation NBA-sized basketball court. Not invited, President Donald Trump, who's known to regularly insult and demean Obama in speeches and to the press. Don Gagne, NPR News, Chicago.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The daily World Cup Fan Fest at Boston City Hall Plaza has been canceled today due to windy weather. The free festival includes a giant TV screen showing World Cup matches. It's scheduled to reopen tomorrow and will continue through June 27. Organizers say attendance is capped at about 5,000 people per day, so fans must register online ahead of time to attend, but today's Fan Fest has been canceled due to the weather. The state Supreme Judicial Court has blocked a potential tax cut from going before Massachusetts voters on the November ballot. If approved, it would cut the state's income tax rate from 5% to 4%. Justices took issue with what they say was, quote, a significantly misleading inaccuracy in the ballot measure summary written by the Massachusetts Attorney General's office. Chris Anderson is with the Mass High-Tech Council, which supported the initiative. He says the SJC's decision goes against voters' desires.
You know, the voters want this thing. It was pretty clear that the policymakers generally were very opposed.
Surveys have shown that 2/3 of voters supported the tax cut measure. One analysis found it would have been lost the state $5 billion in revenue per year. Blue Jays go for the sweep of the Red Sox this afternoon at Fenway. It's a 1:35 start, and the FIFA World Cup continues with lots of matches from now right up until 9 p.m. We are at 77 degrees in Boston. Looks like some nasty weather is heading our way a little later today. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Bank of America, sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 2026, dedicated to offering solutions to help businesses win locally and globally. More at bankofamerica.com/gamechangers.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Why don't you join us there? Hey, the library is closed tomorrow for Juneteenth. We will be live from Brighton. Curiosity question for you here. Is this voice you are hearing right now the voice of Edgar B. Herwick III? Or is it merely a digital mirage? And don't think you're going to figure it out by going to that YouTube live stream either. Not exactly helpful when video deepfakes are now just as convincing as the audio ones. Yes, it has been another busy week in the world of the World Wide Web, AI, misinformation, and more. And there's always a lot to talk with about that when the person you have in studio is the one and only Joan Donovan. Yes, indeed, it is time for the Glitch Report. Joan is the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute, a BU assistant professor of journalism and emerging media studies, Curiosity Desk contributor, and the co-creator of the beaver emoji. Joan, good to see you as always.
Oh, always happy to come back.
So I want to start with this recent New York Times story, which is pretty bleak.
Mm-hmm.
And it is essentially, in some ways, it's a profile, but it's basically a profile of, I guess, it seems like pretty much the world's foremost expert at being able to suss out if a video is real or if it was made by AI. And he essentially is throwing up his hands and saying, you know what? Can't figure it out anymore.
Yeah, so it's a friend of mine, a mutual colleague. Yes,
I was going to say,
course.
I didn't want to, but I was going to be like, I assume you know this person.
So it's a profile of Hani Farid, who's a incredible award-winning computer scientist who's just moved to Dartmouth. So go New Hampshire.
Yeah.
From UC Berkeley, where he led some of the most groundbreaking research in understanding how AI uses data to create manipulated images and language as well as audio. And you would think as a computer scientist, he has access to every single cutting-edge tool.
Yeah.
And the profile begins with him and a pencil because the work is actually very, very difficult. In the article, he describes having to look at a video at least 100 times, just to kind of get a sense of what the shadows are doing. Are there weird glitches? Are there missing fingers and earlobes?
Yeah, do the angles not make sense? Is the light not right?
Yeah, and so you'd think that by now you have deepfakes and you would have the counter, which would be the ability to spot them in the wild with some kind of other software, but that's just not the case.
Yeah.
And especially because none of these companies are incentivized to create the antidote to the thing that they're most interested in, which is this manipulated audio and video that looks incredibly realistic. And so Hani's story is actually one very true and close to my own heart of someone who has to sit there. I must have watched Charlie Kirk die 1,000 times. And you do it because you are overwhelmed by the moment in history. You want to get it right. You want to get it clear. You want to have the best understanding because he is the one that informs journalists. He now has a new business where all he does now all day long is for news agencies and governments look at these videos of war-torn areas and decide essentially based on physics, understandings of geometry, what truly happened. And he was able to verify the video of a Tomahawk missile hitting the area where there was the young girls in Iran, the school where 150 children were massacred.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most striking sort of things to me in this piece is the fact that, he says even when he can sort of work it out, it's incredibly labor intensive and time intensive to figure it out. Meanwhile, the speed with which this stuff gets uploaded onto the internet and is metabolized, you've got like 90 seconds and the cat's out of the bag. And if this is something that's going to get clicks and shoot to the moon, it does in 90 seconds. You can't get out ahead of it. We are operating on two completely different time scales.
It's worse than it was ever before, too. Not only because the ubiquity of the technology is everywhere. When Grok rolled out its ability to manipulate images, it didn't put any gates on if you could create nude images or not. So instantly that created a fanfare. And I think that was an opportunity that PR folks within XAI thought, we'll put this out there with no guardrails. We'll be first to market and the hype will be on us. And of course, the hype is on them, but also there's some lawsuits now for nudification and the creation of child sexual abuse material. And so there's nothing really that positive to be gained out of these technologies that take realistic, that create realistic audio and video of everyday people. It's not just celebrities or politicians, but this is now in high schools.
Yeah.
Principals are dealing with this. Teachers are dealing with, and young women especially.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and young children.
Yeah. And so this is behind the social media bans that we're starting to see in the UK are coming up with, well, social media was bad, but this new technology, this new AI technology is being used to harass and blackmail and create havoc in young people's lives. And so I do think that we are at a crossroads here that Hanny points out cannot be solved without the tech companies coming in and actually enforcing guardrails on their systems so that it becomes harder and harder for people.
Increasingly becoming a theme that is the tech companies need to step up or be pressured to step up.
And that's part of what's happening with the lawsuits against Meta in New Mexico and Los Angeles, and we're going to see what ends up happening. But social media companies changed everything about the way they were doing content moderation once Trump took office.
Yeah.
And as a result, the social media spaces have become much more polarized. You have, your extreme right wing on Grok. You have the left over on Blue Sky, and only the two shall meet when one crosses the line, and that creates all kinds of other problems. And so what we're starting to see is that the political divisions that guide how we think about culture now guiding how we think about technology and regulation.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Joan Donovan from the Critical Internet Studies Institute. This is our weekly glitch report. Well, you mentioned politicians. It's election season. It's only going to be ramping up from here. And, deep fakes are being used right now. I mean, deep fakes, Texas Senate race, GOP primary in Kentucky, Georgia gubernatorial race, LA mayoral campaign. I mean, it's out there.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes it's a shortcut, right, using these deep fakes and these tools.
Yep.
Is you don't have a lot of production capacity. You want to bling out your candidate and make it look like, some kind of...
Yeah, it's special effects.
Exactly.
Right? It's cheap special effects, which is one thing. That's which is distinct from a deep fake, but we're seeing that too.
Yeah, it's lots of AI slop, but then the deep fakes are really meant to trick you.
Yeah.
And we are on the precipice right now. I know we talked about 2 weeks ago, we talked about Spencer Pratt in the mayoral election. He was the Republican candidate that came in third, and now he's saying that he has an audio of one of the candidates.
Yeah. He's like, I've got some stuff that they do not want to come out.
Exactly. And he's betting that one of them will resign before the election, and maybe he will be able to snake back in. But I don't know anybody that's going to believe anything that comes out of the Pratt camp unless it's verifiable in other ways, like other people witnessed it. It's a video where we can verify other people who were there that can then say, without a shadow of a doubt, that this actually happened.
Yeah.
And that's really at the crux of this, is that we are creating a society where, we are starting to have doubt about things that used to be considered somewhat, matter of fact.
Yeah. But what does this mean for us? I mean, it's like we are collectively losing our grip on reality by simply because it is impossible to know what is real. I mean, that feels to me like a really dangerous place.
Well, in the academy, we call it an epistemic crisis.
Epistemic crisis.
And what it just means, the epistemic crisis means is that we don't know how we know, right? So epistemology is the study of how we know what we know.
Yeah.
And when we're in crisis, we don't have those sources and those citations and those verifications. And that's what makes journalism so important in these days is, of course, trust but verify. But then with deepfakes, it's verify all the way down. You have to have physical corroboration. You have to have duplicates. You have to have multiple angles. And that's another thing that Dr. Farid and I do in our research, is that you try to figure out, are there other ways that this has been recorded, whether it's you're dealing with a street crime and you're trying to match up ring videos, things like that, other kind of CCTV footage. And so we're starting to see that the realization that evidence that we used to count on, which of course Photoshop did some disruption back in the day when people are saying, well, you can fake photos. This is quite different because you don't even need to be in the photo to get faked.
Yeah. Well, you earlier mentioned the Charlie Kirk murder, and that is increasingly at the center of a conspiracy on the right, largely being pushed right now by figure Candace Owens, that Charlie Kirk was not killed in the way we all think he was killed, but rather there was an exploding microphone. Maybe there were other people behind this. Here's a clip from yesterday's live stream. This is right-wing commentator Candace Owens furthering questions around Charlie Kirk's killing.
It is much more likely that the reason there was focus on the necklace, the reason the feds were looking for that necklace, the reason that it was given to Erica, is because, if our theory is correct, it contained explosive residue. That would have probably been the single most thing that had explosive residue on it because it was on his chest. It would be that simple. And if the feds were in on it, as we all suspect, then they would have gone, okay, where is that? We need to make sure we get rid of this necklace in some capacity. And the safest bet would have been to say, well, we're giving it to his widow.
What do we make of what's going on here, Joan?
I mean, we had talked a few weeks ago about conspiracies and the way that they materialize and spread. And so here you have someone that's broadcasting live on YouTube and is making these insinuations, is then returning to a point of trauma for a lot of people who, it's very hard to believe that someone was murdered in such a public way where all of us have had to become witness to it. And as a result, YouTube in particular has rules that they could be enforcing about this. Particularly, one of the things that Candace Owens has been exploiting is this very real thing that happened where Israel did create exploding beepers. And they did detonate in areas that killed the targets of those attacks.
And so in this case, saying, and therefore it's this technology that's in this microphone, and if the microphone exploding is what killed him, this is why there'd be residue on the necklace,
exactly,
et cetera.
Yeah, and that claim about the beepers also has its own rabbit hole online. So there are people who are, internet sleuths that have been looking into this and getting more and more detailed. And so as Candace Owens is explaining the charge of the exploding microphone in a very similar way that we've had conspiracies about JFK's death. She's generating interest in her audience again around this. As we know, Tyler Robinson is now going under trial. There's going to be more evidence exposed, of course, but Owens has been consistently pushing these narratives that somehow Israel was involved in Kirk's murder. And unfortunately, you don't need evidence to convince bigots of anything.
Sure.
If they're already predisposed to believing these things, then of course they're going to do it. And in the simplest explanation, she goes on the show to say things like, well, I'm going to need more than a confession. Right? Yeah. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah. But you feel like YouTube has some culpability in this.
I do. I think YouTube has really fallen off. I get some of the most egregious and awful recommendations on my YouTube day in and day out. People that have been banned from YouTube that are getting clipped and put back on it. So if you are interested in the extreme right wing, it's all very much still alive and kicking on YouTube. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to cover this stuff in a report like we do is that most people, it never rises to the surface of what's going on in television news or radio news because it's not seen as logical. There's no evidence to support it, but I do think ideologically it's really important to understand what other people are grappling with as new news comes in about, say, the war in Iran.
Yeah.
Right? And I do think it's really important that young people especially heed the warnings that misinformation sells. And she's making an enormous amount of money from YouTube and from other partnerships that she has to keep these ideas alive and spreading.
Speaking of YouTube, before we let you go, I'd like to reflect on something which you could not see live on YouTube because you could only see it live if you were invited or on Paramount Plus, but certainly plenty of stuff on YouTube in the after.
Fight me right now. Let's grapple.
Let's go.
Get on the live stream.
Let's get in the octagon. UFC match on the White House lawn. Event itself. Thoughts?
Yeah, so I watched parts of it, through no fault of my own. I'm a person who loves culture. It was terrible. I mean, it was there was a New York Times roundup about it, interviewing folks in the MAGA camp, and a lot of people felt like it was pandering to young men, where Trump has really lost a lot of his fanfare. He's lost a lot of the folks. The podcast manosphere that brought him to power and that was so excited about his candidacy, many of them have fallen off and don't agree with his policies, don't agree with the war in Iran. And so this was one, obviously, Trump has money in UFC, promotion of the brand, right? All the typical political corruption that we already talk about. But the clips of this that are going viral online aren't the fights. They're the quips and the stupid things that these people have said, in one particular of insulting Michelle Obama and calling her a man, which is a very big trope on the right wing. There's this notion they call transvestigation. And so if you look this up, you'll see there's threads all over the internet with close-up pictures of Michelle Obama insinuating this. I mean, no powerful woman actually goes through life without being called either a man or the B word, right? Yeah. And so that's just kind of how we roll. But I think the hard part about this is going back to the deepfakes is that not only did that happen, but then there were a bunch of different deepfakes that made it worse, indulged it, and then also claims that, he's going to be banned from UFC, et cetera. I don't expect any real consequences to happen other than, essentially that people will move on. Nobody really watched it. It didn't become a moment in the cultural zeitgeist. You didn't see a ton of memes coming out of it that were proud. Even Ronda Rousey, who's arguably the toughest woman alive, said it was a bad card. It wasn't the best fighters.
Real quick before you go, I do want to get your take on something that happened around this, which is the FBI has arrested 5 people, said they foiled a plot that would have been some sort of drone attack. It seems like on this. Kash Patel posting about it on social media. What do you make of all of that?
Yeah, I've been following up and watching. It's the Secret Service that was leading the investigation, and they're actually very angry with the FBI who said, the plans out loud because they're still looking for people. They claim that there's at least 21 people, and the idea was to fly drones over that would explode over the event, and then as people were filing out, to snipe them. And of course, you have ultra wealthy people. You had Mark Zuckerberg there with his chief of staff, not his wife Priscilla.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of other folks there from all walks of life. Shane Gillis, the comedian. You had a bunch of podcasters. So you had a lot of high profile people there that, if there was to be an attack, would be like that. I get very worried because we didn't really think a lot about commercialized drones as a weapon of domestic terrorism, which is now something you can buy.
Great. So you've given us more to worry about.
Well,
Joan.
it's the worst thing ever,
much.
But it came up in unfortunately came up in the manifestos of the San Diego shooters that we talked about a few weeks ago. Is these young kids were talking about using drones to commit terrorism, and so this is another thing that we have to grapple with post, new generation warfare, is that commercial technologies are now weapons of war, including drones and AI.
It's a brave new world. We have been speaking with misinformation researcher Joan Donovan. Joan's the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute, a BU assistant professor of journalism and emerging media studies, and of course, a Curiosity Desk contributor. Joan, as always, thanks for being with us.
I'll see you next week.
Up next, neuroscientists at Harvard have tracked down the long-lost map for smell. Turns out it was right under our noses the whole time. This is the Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Juneteenth is a Texas story that became an American one. The day word of emancipation reached Galveston more than 2 years after Lincoln's proclamation. In Boston, the Museum of African American History marks the moment with Freedom, a Juneteenth celebration on Joy Street. Plus, we preview Momentum, a citywide arts festival spotlighting Black artists, culture makers, and creative life across Boston. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Compass on the Bay, an assisted living community in South Boston dedicated to those with Alzheimer's and related dementias, featuring research-based therapeutic programming. More at compassonthebay.com. And Revision Energy, a renewable energy company building and servicing solar, batteries, and air source heat pumps for local homes and businesses for over 20 years. Revision Energy. Revision your power. More at revisionenergy.com.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. So now when it comes to the census, scientists have long understood most of them as having something of a roadmap, meaning we know how the eye maps physical space and how the ear maps sound frequencies. But the nose and our sense of smell has always been a little bit different. Receptors in the nose were thought to be randomly distributed, but neuroscientists have now determined that we do have a map for the nose, or at least mice do, and we probably do too. More to come on that. Joining us now to talk about this discovery and what it means for our understanding of the nose and the brain, we are joined by two guests. Sandeep Robert Datta is a professor of neurobiology at Harvard Medical School, and David Brann is a postdoctoral research fellow. Bob, welcome back to the Curiosity Desk. David, happy to have you.
Hey, Edgar. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, let's talk about this new reason. This sounds very important and like a huge deal. Am I right? Is this a big deal? You're both nodding, so it sounds like I am.
We think it's super exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a big mystery for a very, very long time. Like you were mentioning, we know a lot about how vision and hearing work, and we know that they work because your brain makes maps of visual space and of auditory space, in which neurons that are nearby to each other tend to encode things that are nearby in space when you're looking at them, or frequencies that are similar to each other. But how odors are mapped has been a mystery that's, it's like 50, 100 years old.
And is it right to say, David, that we thought it was just totally random, like every single nose was different in a way that two eyes are not different? Is that sort of how we thought it was?
Yeah, it was thought that there was maybe a little bit of structure, but actually it was thought were quite random. And I think, back in the 90s, people made these first observations. They thought things were random, and then the field never really fully tested those assumptions.
We were just like, yeah, that's probably right. Let's move on. Is this, is computing power, AI, has this enabled us to sort of work this out in a way that maybe we could not have before?
Yeah, exactly. So the sense of smell it's super complicated. There's hundreds of different types of receptors in humans, over 1,000 of them in mice. And so experimentally, in the past, people could only look at 1, 2, maybe a couple at a time. Now with more modern technologies, we're able to basically look at all of them in single animals. And that's what it allowed us to identify this map and this organization in the first place.
So how did we find it? How did you actually find the map?
Lots and lots of hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did two things, really. One thing we did was to ask in each neuron in your nose that senses smells, what genes are present. Okay. And that gave us a really important clue that maybe different cells express different genes depending on where they were physically in your nose. So the cells that are at the top of your nose might express a totally different set of genes than the cells at the bottom of your nose. And so what that tells you is that the neurons in your nose that detect smell know something about space. So there could be a map because there's some physical organization in the nose. And then the second thing was to use these advanced technologies that David was mentioning to actually map out the physical locations of each of these receptors. And what we found was that, there's 1,000 receptors in mice, and inside the mouse's nose, going from top to bottom, there are 1,000 overlapping stripes of receptors that are very precisely positioned, such that, and this is the other amazing thing, such that the order of those stripes is the same in basically all of the 300 mice we looked at.
That's crazy. Was that unexpected?
Totally.
Yeah. So it's like an orchestra, right? In a way, that's sort of what it sounds like to me, right? Like, if you don't think about it, you're like, well, I don't know, there's a lot of music playing. It's cool. But the orchestra has a very precise way that they set up in order for this beautiful music to come out.
Exactly. There's this gorgeous underlying structure that hadn't been unveiled before. And now we know that somehow during development, your nervous system is capable of building such a precise map. And I think a lot of the reasons why people, like David was saying, hadn't looked for 30 years is because no one imagined that biology was capable of building such a precise and detailed map. But it turns out biology is amazing, and it could do it, and David discovered it.
How's that feel, David? You feeling pretty good right now?
Yeah.
Good for you. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that it's something that we can just visualize. And so we really understand, like, the structure now. We have this map, this coordinate, this underlying organization. And it really, I think, is opening the door to a lot of interesting follow-up questions that we're actively working on.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Bob Datta and David Brann about new research providing the long-hoped-for roadmap for smell. Well, let's talk about what does this enable us to do now that we couldn't do a month ago?
Well, I mean, the first thing we want to answer is somehow biology's put these 1,000 receptors in a particular order, going from top to bottom. The question is why? Yeah, what's going on there? And so you can think about a couple of possibilities, like maybe everything you love is at the top and everything you hate is at the bottom. Maybe if you're a mouse, things you run towards are at the top and things you run away from are at the bottom. Maybe chemistry is organized. So you can imagine, we smell all sorts of different odor chemicals. So maybe some types of chemicals are in one part of the nose.
Like acrid things are here.
Exactly,
and sort of like sweeter things are here.
Exactly, or acids are here, and ketones are here. So we don't know. We've done some experiments that tell us that simple answers aren't likely to be the truth. But we're working pretty hard at trying to figure out, why the order is what it is.
And so if we figure out why, is it just like cool now we know, or will this sort of like allow us to, I don't know, like do things that we can't do now?
Yeah. I mean, if you take a step back, as you mentioned, relative to other senses, we have a very, very poor understanding of how smell works in the first place. Yeah. So smell is a super complicated sense. It involves, there's a bunch of floating volatile odor molecules. There's millions, billions of them. As I mentioned, there's hundreds, thousands of receptors. And so we don't really know what odorants activate which receptors and how that turns into the percept of smell. And so I think understanding that at least there's this organization to the nose. Now we're looking into the brain. We haven't talked about it, but actually we found that the map in the nose is actually also analogous and actually corresponds to one of the maps that we found in the brain. And so we're wondering, how does that actually relate to the higher level cognitive perception?
Well, I mean, speaking of cognitive perception, speaking about cognitive stuff and perception, I think about, obviously, COVID-19. Smell was a thing around COVID-19 that a lot of people all of a sudden were paying attention to because they were losing their sense of smell. We've seen all of this research out there about connections between loss of smell and loss of brain functionality, whether that be through Alzheimer's or other degenerative diseases. I mean, is this the kind of thing, by knowing this, will that help us either diagnose or treat these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that this teaches us is that because your sense of smell is organized into a map in your nose, if you want to fix the sense of smell, you have to fix the whole map. And so people have been thinking about fixing the sense of smell in people who have lost it from COVID, for example, in a number of different ways. One interesting thing about the nose that's like a special thing about the nose is that it's constantly regenerating. So your nose contains within it stem cells that rebuild the nose when the nose gets damaged as you like breathe in dust and you have like you know, colds and stuff. And so what this map means is that if you're going to restore the sense of smell, you really need to restore the whole map. You know, and so you need to somehow stimulate regeneration across the entire epithelium. Another thing people are thinking about is actually putting like little wires into your nose to help artificially stimulate your nose. So this is an emerging
synthetic nose.
Exactly, like a brain-computer interface, except to let you smell stuff.
Whoa!
But if you do that, you're gonna have to like put electrodes all over the nose. So that the whole map, you have access to the whole map. And so one of the implications of this work is the way we fix the sense of smell is going to have to respect this map.
So. This is the research that you've done has been found in mice, but we suspect this is exactly how the human nose works as well, and how confident in that are we, and how do we figure that out?
Well, we still don't know. Actually, this morning I was looking at some data from humans, and so we're able to do some of the same techniques on humans. It's a lot more difficult. And so we're still trying to figure out if what we've identified generalizes, but our hope is that it will.
And I will say that one of the great things about America is that there's this network of hospitals that will give you cadaveric noses, you know, if you're a researcher. And so we are just now getting our first human noses on ice. And so David,
so you've ordered up some. And not on the internet. You went through approved channels, legitimate channels for this. You're like, I'd just like to order 10 noses, please.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Yeah, David and I just got our first email that we can expect our first nose any day now.
Wow.
And of course, the first thing we'll do is slice it open and ask whether or not we see a similar kind of map that we observed in mice. And I will say, you know, I'm quite optimistic that the organization of the human nose is similar to that of the mice enough that this map will exist there.
Why do you have that level of confidence? Is it just is that how physiologically it usually works? Or?
Yeah, I mean, with the data that we've looked at, there is a lot of correspondence. So basically, all the cell types that are there in the mouse are also there in humans. A lot of those gene programs that we see in the mouse, a lot of the genes themselves are conserved. And so mice and humans, they're actually fairly well conserved. And so from what we've looked at, like a human sensory neuron looks a lot like a mouse sensory neuron.
And just to give you a really concrete sense of that, you know, David, who's amazing, you know, he was the one who actually discovered in the mouse how COVID causes you to lose your sense of smell. And so he discovered that there's a particular cell type in the nose called the sustentacular cell that gets infected by the virus.
I see.
And that ultimately causes the whole tissue to react, and then you lose your sense of smell. It turns out that since David's initial work, people have done similar experiments in humans and looked at humans who have been infected.
And the same thing is
exactly
happening.
the same thing.
So there's precedent for saying like mouse nose is a good proxy for human nose when we're trying to figure some stuff out.
Exactly.
For people, I mean, I think I mostly have my brain around this, but for like people who don't live in the world that you live in, can you like give me a concrete example, like, you know, in terms of like when I pick this cup of coffee up and I'm smelling this, how does that work, and what is how does the map interface with telling us how that works?
So when you pick up your cup of coffee and you sniff, you're actually sniffing about probably 200 to 800 separate individual molecules, all of which are volatile and which collectively give you the sense that you're smelling coffee. And subtle changes in exactly what molecules are in the coffee allow you to distinguish coffee from Ethiopia from Colombia. Okay?
Yeah.
Those chemicals go into your nose and they bind to receptors on sensory neurons.
And what are when you say receptor, what does it look like?
Yeah, exactly. So think about these sensory neurons in your nose as having little fingers sticking out into the airspace in your nose.
Okay.
Those fingers are called cilia.
So they're like little hairs.
They're little hairs, and decorating those hairs are receptors that are designed like a lock and key to interact with these odor molecules that you've sniffed in.
So is it like a physical shape and a physical shape that match up?
Exactly. There's a kind of shape matching. And when the lock and the key match each other, the receptor is kind of turned on, and that sends an electrical signal through the neuron in your nose, through wiring that actually crosses through the bottom of your skull, through tiny little holes in the bottom of your skull.
I thought you said smell was complicated, you guys. This sounds totally easy.
And then the wiring ends up in your brain, and that's what tells you what you're smelling.
Wild. Yeah. One other question on the basic smell and how this does or doesn't complicate what the work that you're doing and what you found here. I mean, I think a lot about how prediction is something that we're using in all of our senses, whether we know it or not, right? I mean, people say like when you see something, you're maybe not seeing everything. Your brain's actually really good at like filling in the gaps when this should be in between that and the other thing. Does the same thing happen in smell? And does that make all of this harder?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it happens even more so in smell. As Bob mentioned, most what we think of as smells are these, many, many molecules. And so, yeah, that's why, orange smells similar to a clementine, even if they have slightly different molecular compositions, the brain's able to, infer that, these are related. And so that, happens both at the receptor level, there's overlap in the types of, molecules that activate those receptors. And then that also happens at the higher order cognitive level where it's, this pattern of activity, is relatively similar to, this other thing. And therefore, they smell similar.
And one thing to keep in mind, right, is that like you were saying, your sense of smell is always making predictions. And part of making predictions is kind of filling in the blanks, like estimating what you're missing. And part of the reason why smell has to do that is because you have two nostrils. So like when you sniff in the coffee, right, you're not getting exactly the same thing on the left and the right? But somehow your brain puts everything together and fills in the blanks from whatever's missing, and you get one sense that you're smelling coffee, not two different ones in your right and left heads.
It's not in stereo, it's in mono.
Exactly, it's in mono.
Right. We've been speaking with neuroscientists Bob Datta and David Brann about new research on the roadmap for the nose and how it might help us treat conditions related to the loss of scent. Thank you both for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Up next, do you hate when people say Want to know why they do? Stay tuned. This is the Curiosity Desk. Don't go anywhere.
Before the battles of Lexington and Concord, there was a revolt in Worcester. Before his famous midnight ride, Paul Revere spread ideas with cartoons. And before the Commonwealth, it was just a colony. This year, GBH News is bringing together the people, places, and untold stories that turned Massachusetts from colony to Commonwealth. Available now at gbh.org/America250. Support for GBH comes from you.
And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank. Brilliantly boring since 1865. And the University of Rhode Island's College of Business with an online Master's of Science in Supply Chain Management designed to prepare students to develop resilient and flexible supply chain strategies. uri.edu/MS Supply Chain.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Well, each week we get a helpful heaping of questions from you, our listeners, and a lot of them, and we love this, are about the origins of words and phrases. In past shows, we've learned about the etymology of beloved phrases like wicked pissa and deaf as a haddock. We're happy to announce that we are back with some more of your recent curiosity questions, and we are joined by our friends from the radio show Away with Words, Grant Barrett and Martha Barnette. Also, Martha is the author of Friends with Words, Adventures in Language Land. Definitely check that out. Definitely check out the podcast version of their radio show. Grant, Martha, welcome to the Curiosity Desk. Great to have you again.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Well, we're going to jump
Hi,
right.
Edgar.
Oh, hey, we're going to jump right into the listener questions here because I want to get to as many as we can. We're going to start off with Beth from Newport, Rhode Island. Take it away, Beth.
I want to know about those pesky little dust bunnies. Why are they called dust bunnies?
Why are they called dust bunnies? Let's go.
Oh, man. Well, we don't have a clear beginning for the term dust bunny. But, if you think about it, the bunny part makes a whole lot of sense, right? Because they're fluffy. You go under the bed to try to get them, and they kind of scatter like bunnies, and they proliferate like bunnies. At least they do in our house.
Yeah, indeed.
We can find this term back as far as early 1950s, but we're sure it's older than that. It's, one of those idiomatic expressions that don't necessarily get recorded in print very much because they're just transmitted orally and they take a while to show up in black and white. But there are so many other terms involving animals for these objects. Do you ever call them dust mice?
Oh, no, I haven't.
Or dust kittens or bunny
Really?
tails.
Oh.
Turkey nests,
Pussycats.
feathers, pussycats.
Wow.
Yeah, but there's some really weird ones too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like house moss. or
House
curly
moss.
dirt. Or here's a favorite, ghost turds.
Wow, that one's very clever. It's kind of gross, but
People are clever. They love to play with language, and it shows up in this universal condition. The house gets dirty.
Yeah.
So we come up with names for it.
does the fact that we're using all these animal names for something like this, is it reflective of just sort of the fact that like we have relationships with animals, we see animals, they're in our consciousness, and therefore we use it in our language?
Well, yeah, we're always making metaphors with language. We see something that looks like something else and we call it by that
Yeah.
same name. But then there are all these other weird terms for it, like woolies and cussy wops. I don't want cussy wops under my bed. I don't know about you.
And what sounds naughty but isn't, the British might call it slut's wool, S-L-U-T. But it's the old meaning, not someone who's sexually promiscuous, but somebody who's slovenly or a bad housekeeper.
Oh my
So
goodness
it's
gracious.
the older meaning of the word. But so all of this is because it's a shared condition and it's fuzzy under the bed. So that's why the animal term is more likely. It's
Yeah.
fuzzy. And
Yeah.
actually, if you have animals and they shed,
Yeah.
you know exactly that. Some of that
Yeah.
is the animal's fault.
All right, there we go.
Yeah. Even in European languages, in French, the term for it is mouton, which means sheep. And in Canadian French, the term is equal to kittens.
Fascinating stuff. That's more than I bargained for. That's great. All right, let's go to our next question. This is Scott in Mashpee. Go ahead, Scott.
I was interested in the origin of bubbler. I've lived in many places and have never heard the term. Even stranger when you hear someone say bubbler.
So bubbler, this is, of course, I think everywhere outside of New England, either a water fountain or a drinking fountain, but it is around these parts called the bubbler or the bubbler. Do we have any idea why?
Oh,
Yes.
we sure do. There's a story behind that, Grant.
Yeah, and Edgar, I want to say what's really funny about what you just said is that you think it's not outside New England. People in Wisconsin who use it think it's not outside Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
But the truth is, yeah, it's used in New England, Wisconsin, and parts of Australia.
Wow.
And the story is about typhoid. There was this period in the early 1900s where there are huge typhoid outbreaks, and medical professionals are trying to tamp it down. And what they discover that one of the vectors is communal drinking cups, like at the workplace or at school, these tin cups with a dipper.
Yeah.
Yes. The people take these and share these during water breaks, or they used to, and they realized what they needed was water that arced up or went up that you could sample while it's in the air and not have to touch your lips to a device. And so one of these devices was a bubbler. It's a thing that literally bubbles the water straight up and makes it kind of fall back down.
Wow. Do we have any sense of why that bubbler term hangs on or is sort of like in somewhere like Wisconsin and New England and, as you point out, Australia, but maybe not as widely used universally in other places? Is it likely that they were the ones that had the bubbler, or it just sort of held on there in a way it didn't in other places?
Yeah, I think you guys were sort of early adopters, Once again, there were companies that produced these bubbling valves that bubbled up, as Grant said, rather than doing the arc that we often see today. And one of them was the Kohler Water Works in eastern Wisconsin. And apparently there were other ones over where you were. And so that name caught on in certain areas. And Grant, I think I would call that one of the Chamber of Commerce words that you talk about all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's a marked as being local, and that if somebody calls it a bubbler, that they're an insider, they're part of your group. I do want to say, though, to kind of answer your question in another way, part of the reason it sticks is because you get marketing, and Kohler is able to successfully sell its devices to particular schools and companies. For example, they sold them to the Whalum Amusement Park, and they sold them to other businesses in the Massachusetts area and near Boston. And so those are the places. But if they bought their device from another company that didn't have the particular bubbler valve, they wouldn't call it a bubbler.
Great
So all of this is about typhoid. It's also, by the way, Edgar, about germ theory. Because germ theory had kind of been percolating up from science and medicine.
Bubbling up, so to speak.
Percolating.
But it didn't really hit the regular person's consciousness until the early 1900s. So at the time all this is taking place, people were starting to realize, oh, wait, there are these microscopic creatures here that I need to avoid.
Yeah.
They're on your lips. I don't want them on my lips. How can I do this? And so it really all came together.
Such cool stuff. You're listening to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Grant Barrett and Martha Barnette from Away with Words about some of the meanings or origins of some of your favorite phrases and words. We're going to kick it over now to Julie from Framingham. Go ahead, Julie.
Where does the phrase fair weather friend come from?
Fair weather friend, or since we're in World Cup season, I would say fair weather fan is another one I heard when I was young. My dad used to tell us you can't be a fair weather fan. Where does the term come from? What do we know?
It's been around for a while, and it means just, it's a literal comparison of good weather to good times in life and bad weather to bad times in life. And we know it's been around since at least the 1680s. There was a...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Somebody wrote, when the troubled sky portends a storm and clouds begin to reel, then those fair weather friends bid us farewell. So people have been complaining about fair weather friends, people who just show up in the good times and aren't there in the bad times for centuries now.
That is...
Yeah, and there are expressions for this in other languages, and the other European languages, of course. And in Chinese, interesting enough, in Mandarin Chinese, their equivalent translates as cupboard-loving friend or wine and meat friend. It's the friend who's only in your house when they know you have food. When there's food on like if you're cooking up, they're coming. If you're not cooking, they're not coming.
A meat and potatoes friend.
Yeah, exactly.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Grant Barrett and Martha Barnette about some of your questions about word and phrase origins. We've got a question from Anne-Marie in Brighton who says when she was a child, she used to pick dandelions and say, Mama had a baby and the head popped off. And when they said head, they would pop the top of the dandelion off. Any sense of the origin of, as she puts it, this macabre tradition?
Well, it is macabre, isn't it? I was thinking about, I guess it's no more macabre than Rockabye Baby. That's or
Ring
step
around
on a
the
crack.
rosy.
Yeah, right. And step on a crag, break your mother's back. There's a long tradition of kids playing outside and finding things to do with flowers and having things like that to say about it that are a little bit morbid. There's a variation of that goes, a lady had a baby and its head popped off. And there's another one from at least the 1960s. It goes back at least that far, but probably farther. Miss Polly had a dolly and her head popped off. There's a nice rhythm to it, and it's something to say while you're doing that. But it even has an older history than that. It goes back to in Scotland, people would say, little kids would say, Mary Queen of Scots got her head chopped off.
And she did. Yes,
she did.
1587. But what's interesting is there are all these centuries in between when Mary's Queen of Scots met her unfortunate end and when this rhyme appears. So, obviously it's still taught in the schools, especially if you're there, but we're not quite sure why there's this big gap. But it does have to do with jump rope rhymes and ball bouncing chants and all these other things that require that kind of da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da rhythm, to keep the game going at the same pace.
Yeah.
And Martha, did you do any of these fighting games with or Edgar even? Did you with plants like Conquerors, where you take two chestnuts and bang them together to see which one's harder? Or
oh yeah, sure, absolutely.
Stalks
yeah.
of plants.
We did it with pieces of coal where I grew up in Pennsylvania. But
oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Every Christmas when you emptied your stocking, I know you.
Yeah. We've only got a little bit more than a minute left, but I want to touch on this last one from Kathleen in Bristol, Rhode Island. Now, the good news is I think you two have an entire podcast episode about this, so you can maybe just give us a little tease, and we'll tell people to check out your podcast episode about this. But this is from Kathleen saying, I hate the current misuse of the word like, which seems to have usurped any silent brief pauses. Even the verbiage of many NPR reporters, and sorry, Kathleen, guilty here, I think. How did this happen? Basically, the like, I mean to like say this like thing, like sticking in there when it shouldn't be.
The first thing to understand is that when you hear something that sounds overused or like filler, it is almost always in a linguistic role. It almost always has a purpose. And the reason you think it's filler is because you don't understand that purpose. So it could be a placeholder. It can be a hedging device where you're kind of letting the other person know, I have these thoughts and these opinions, but I'm not going to commit to them really strongly because I'm giving you an opening to come into the conversation and work with me to kind of find a consensus. And there are many, many other ways this like operates. But two things I want to share. It didn't come from the Valley Girls, and young men do it more. Not young women.
Now that's a great tease. That is a great tease. We're going to have to leave it there. We've been speaking with our friends Grant Barrett and Martha Barnette from the radio show Away with Words. By the way, Martha's got a book, Friends with Words, Adventures in Language Land. Check that out. More on that use of the word like can be found on the Away with Words team's website. That's waywordradio.org. The episode is called Overuse of Like. Definitely check that out. And thank you both for being with us today again on the Curiosity Desk.
Take care.
Thank you, Edgar.
And it's like Jared Bowen here with me. Hey, Jared.
I do not enjoy the overuse of like.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But what I do enjoy is the Culture Show starring Jared Bowen. What do you got on the show today?
So, of course, we're one day away from Juneteenth. So Noelle Trent of the Museum of African American History will join us about their Juneteenth celebrations, both here in Boston and in Nantucket. We'll also talk about a pretty bad incident that happened there recently with an arson attempt. So she will brief us on the latest of that, but we will return to the joy and talk about all the great celebrations planned for the next 2 days. Plus, Mass Art President Mary Grant is here, as she is every month, and she'll be talking about commencement season and the speakers who were disinvited and what graduates wanted to hear and what they didn't want to hear and why. And then we will talk about Momentum, which, you know, the BAMS Fest, which happens every summer. This is a new effort that stretches all the way from Boston to Brockton and a great event at the Fuller Craft Museum. So we'll talk about all they have in store for us later this month.
Sounds like another great one. That is Jared Bowen and the Culture Show coming your way in just under 2 minutes. So do not go anywhere. As for us, that about does it for now. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Lawson, Nicole Garcia, Patty Daniels, and Jamie Bologna. Make sure there are never dust bunnies on our bubbla. Our engineers, John the Claw Parker. Special thanks to Andrew Massawa and Bill Piacitelli. We will be right back here tomorrow on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. If you want to, you can check out our podcast as well. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts. Till next time, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. I hope you will stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Maine Maritime Museum. Their new exhibit, Resounding, highlights the resilience and traditions of Maine's Indigenous and Black maritime communities, featuring both historic artifacts and contemporary art. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. At a housing development in Boston for LGBTQ+ seniors, residents find resilience amidst renewed attacks on their community's protections across the country. Watch Living in Pride tonight at 9:30 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Juneteenth. It's a Texas story that became an American one, the day word of emancipation reached Galveston, where enslaved people had remained in bondage long after President Lincoln's proclamation. It marks the joy of freedom, but also the distance between freedom declared and freedom delivered. In Boston, the Museum of African American History takes up that story through Freedom, a Juneteenth celebration. A block party with music, poetry, and art workshops. That's followed by one in Nantucket. President and CEO Noelle Trent joins us for a preview. Then commencement season was as much about controversy as it was about ceremony. Speakers were disinvited over Gaza and politics. Graduates rejected AI sales pitches with resounding boos. And college officials walked the cap and gown stage as though it were eggshells. Mass Art President Mary Grant joins us on what graduates heard and what they refused to hear. Finally, it's a movable feast. And it's a movable fest. 5 days of everything from food to film to fashion, from Boston to Brockton. Titled Momentum, it offers unbridled creativity and joy built around Black culture, collaboration, and connection. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. Juneteenth marks freedom delayed, the day in 1865 when enslaved people in Galveston, Texas finally learned they were free more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. At the Museum of African American History, that history comes alive this week with Freedom, a Juneteenth celebration, including a free open house and block party at its Beacon Hill campus, with music, art workshops, and local vendors. And if you're headed to or on Nantucket, there's a sister celebration on the island. That's Saturday, and also features a free block party. The celebration this year carries deeper resonance at a moment when Black history is increasingly challenged, distorted, and or erased. The museum's work insists that it remains visible, rooted, and shared. Earlier this month, a package of Juneteenth materials delivered to the museum was opened outside the African Meeting House, and its contents were burned. Police and the National Park Service are investigating it as arson. The museum is moving ahead, both with its programming and with the work it does year-round, connecting people to the history told in its buildings. Noelle Trent is president and CEO of the Museum of African American History in Boston and Nantucket. Welcome back to The Culture Show. Great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, we'll go from bad to good in this instance.
I like that.
Yes,
Okay.
We want to end with the good. I do want to ask about that arson incident. The authorities have already said it was an incident of arson. I know there was surveillance footage of the person who did this. It could have ended really horribly.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what you have learned at this point.
One, I have been so grateful for the words of support, encouragement, resources people have referred us to in this moment. What we have learned is pretty much what's out there for the general public that has been shared through either the Boston Police Department or National Park Service law enforcement. They have an interested individual that they're looking at. But other than that, we don't know what else, where the investigation lies. For us, it could have been a much different story. You know, I think people forget Beacon Hill is a very closely built community. So what happens to one building immediately impacts our neighbors. So not only was my concern for the meeting house and what that means, but you have all these other historic buildings and homes and families that would have been negatively impacted had the weather been different. If it had been one of those windy nights that we had had in the last couple of weeks preceding that night, one ember could have ignited something, and then this would be a completely different conversation. So we absolutely have to take that seriously. And given the context in which we're in, it was a sobering reminder for myself, especially, and my team, that the work that we do is great, it's wonderful, it's amazing, but not everyone agrees with it.
Well, and I should point out the reason we know that is because this was very intentional because of what this person burned. As I understand it, it was a box of materials related to the Juneteenth celebration.
Yeah, it was related to the Juneteenth celebration. The area where the burnt materials were found is not an easily accessible area to the public. You really have to know our property and to look for somewhere. So, we'll let the investigation do what it needs to do and find out the motivations of the individual. But for us, it was just, if it had been on Joy Street, which is a public thoroughfare and people come up and down, we could write it off as someone having a bad day or something like that, and maybe it wouldn't feel as intentional. Where these items were found behind the meeting house is not somewhere generally people go after dark. It's just not. And so it requires us to think about what message is being sent by that action, intentionally or unintentionally, and then what our response is going to be.
Well, how do you think about it? In this case, it's one individual, but as you say, it's a reminder. So what do you do with what happened and how you look at your building, your team, your programming?
Well, the first thing is we're going to do the work anyway. We've got to be resilient. We have to be resistant to this sort of effort to silence the work. There is value in this work. We are the oldest existing Black church building in the country. It's survived for over 220 years. We need to make sure that it continues to survive. So there's an obligation there. And then the reality of, well, maybe we need to look at our security protocols. Perhaps we haven't done that in a while. Maybe we're going to have some greater internal conversations. We've had some just as check-ins, but greater internal conversations of what does safety and security look like for the team? What does it look like for the buildings? Talking to some groups to help us do that assessment and figure out, is there something better we could be doing with the buildings? All of that is on the table right now. I'm hesitant about gates or anything that communicates that we're not open. That this isn't a welcoming place. But we have to take these threats seriously. And one of the things that I know as a historian is that when Black religious institutions, artistic institutions, any group decides to take a bold declaration of the history and culture and put that out there into the world, when people disagree, the first thing that they do, or one of the first things they do, is the rhetoric, and then there's next is a physical attack. And so this vandalism, this arson, this, buildings have been burnt down because of this, is not out of the realm of possibility when you dare to tell the truth and stand in the power of that truth.
Well, jumping on that point, you were previously at the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis. A huge swath of history is told there with extraordinary artifacts throughout that history. Did anything like this happen while you were there? Do you remember that kind of hate?
So not an arson incident, but around the time that the city of Memphis took down the Confederate statue. So I want to say that's probably about 2018. There were statues of Nathan Bedford Forrest and some other members. There was a call for people who supported the Confederacy and that history, of that belief, to ride up and quote unquote take down one of their monuments, which is what was posted on social media. The National Civil Rights Museum has a wonderful and incredible security structure, which includes dialogue with local law enforcement. So once our staff cited that and we let them know, and they saw that as well, there was a coordinated effort to protect the building, not to infringe on that particular group's right to express their outrage at the removal of the statues, but to ensure that harm did not happen to the campus or the staff or the visitors or the community. So a bunch of us in leadership actually came into work because it happened on a weekend, and just stayed there to make sure that things were okay, that people knew that we were supporting them. But it's not unusual that that institution has also had bomb threats for their opening and some other events. So unfortunately, for Black institutions and Black museums, these sorts of threats are not outside of the realm of possibility. It's just sometimes you get so comfortable in doing the work, and I think that's for everybody, that you forget that these threats continue to exist, and you think that the parameters and the things that you've put in place are enough, and 98% of the time they are.
I'm speaking with Noelle Trent, President and CEO of the Museum of African American History in Boston and Nantucket. We will talk about their Juneteenth celebrations in a moment. As I say, we're moving from bad to good.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle, we have a recent court ruling by a U.S. district judge right here in Boston who said that the Trump administration, the National Park Service, now has to restore signs that were changed because they violated what the Trump administration thought were negative views of the country in terms of the true history that was being told. We saw that right here in Boston, in Charlestown, at the Bunker Hill Monument, for banners that talked about the suffrage movement, that talked about enslavement, that talked about immigration. How do you see that ruling and where this suggests we're headed with that being shut down on the heels of the Trump name being removed from the Kennedy Center and there being a scrutiny now of the Trump administration's actions on culture?
Well, we were keenly aware of what the impact of these policies could potentially be as early as last year when those executive orders came out around the National Park Service and the Smithsonian and implications that there would be vetting of the panels and content within those institutions. It was just a matter of when it would possibly impact the rest of us. What I will say is Boston National Park Service has an amazing team of people working there. And so I do want to make sure people understand that they are abiding by policy. They are civil servants. They have been with the system, many of them for many, many years through numerous administrations. So they abide by policy. And that doesn't mean that they don't have specific feelings, but I do want to honor the work of our partners in the Park Service that they do day to day. With the panels and the judgment that was issued, I felt that very affirming because it means that the work that has been done, which is rooted in the historical methodology, that is drawn by scholarship, that is vetted by academics, in the Smithsonian and National Park Service, nothing goes up without being thoroughly vetted. It's almost like, the news media, that there are certain things that don't go out without getting a legal review and getting expert reviews to make sure that the sources are reliable. So this was not a slapdash operation. This is an extremely meticulous operation. And so I think for the museum field, what it says is that our work is respected, our ability to represent the multiple perspectives of a historical event is affirmed, and that these can exist in public and spaces in a way that does not infringe on individuals' freedom of speech. You don't have to like that other perspective of history, but at least be acquainted with it. And I think it's okay if that story or that perspective makes you uncomfortable. I think it's up for us to interrogate why it makes us uncomfortable. But for me, I thought for the field, it was an incredibly powerful moment because it says that the work that we have fought so hard to do, to include multiple perspectives, to include historically underrepresented groups, to include the experiences of women in telling a holistic story and not subtracting to the existing narrative that people know, but adding to it in a way that gives you a richness is important. And the other thing is that no one is creating anything. We're reflecting the groups and the people who made up the community that created the events that we're recognizing, right? And so all of that is just a reflection of who this community, who the city, who people were at the time. And that's an incredibly important role that historians play.
I don't, by any stretch, want people to become complacent at all, but do you have a sense that justice is working here? I think of you in particular because you've been on the show a number of times now, and we had another difficult conversation at one point about your losing funding, and then recently you told me that some of the funding has been restored, and then we see this happened, and now we know that those placards and those banners will be restored. The facts, the history will be restored. I remember seeing the Attorney General not long ago at an event talking about the number of lawsuits that actually are succeeding. Do you feel that in your sphere as well?
I do. And your comment makes me think of what Coretta Scott King said, is that freedom isn't free. You have to earn it essentially in every generation. And so we can't become complacent. The reason why there was a ruling and the reason why there was pushback is because of brilliant people who stood up against it. I mean, it's great to have someone like our state attorney general, Andrea Campbell, step up and legally go through the process. But in Philadelphia, when the president's house panels came down, what I thought was brilliant was people in the neighborhood took the scripts, typed it up, and as tourists were coming by, were literally reading it to them and saying, this came down, but let me tell you this story. And this was purely voluntary. I love that because the history is all of ours. It is palpable. But you can't just assume that an institution can have the wherewithal to fight on its own. This country is made up of so many small to mid-sized museums like us who specialize in a very particular perspective of history. And we are dedicated to preserving that because it helps us understand our national story. But we can't do it alone. So it requires people to step up and support us. And that support, I got to be frank, has to look like financial support for us, for our peer sites, because this fight is going to go on for a while. This is not a 30-day, 90-day, this news cycle thing. We are fighting these fights even when they're not on the front pages of the newspaper. And so if you value a historical place, if you value the Museum of African American History, or whatever museums or historic sites in your community, you got to step up, become a member, make a donation, do something, because the work is hard, it's rewarding, but this is an arduous fight, and this is going to go on for a while.
Well, we're just on the verge of talking about your Juneteenth celebrations, which is perfect lead into that, why we need to remember these moments and celebrate these moments. Before we do that, though, I want to bring in a conversation that we had earlier this week when I spoke with Eddie Esclade Jr. about his book, America, USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries, as we're talking about an anniversary tomorrow. Here he is discussing the contradiction between the founding myth of a free America and the way it has treated its marginalized.
What does it mean to idolize a state, something so abstract that could actually corrode your moral sense? I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, folks, the country has told itself a story, but people are living their lives and they're telling counter stories, particularly Black people who are bearing the brunt of the country's doubleness, the country's divided soul. We're speaking back in every moment in which the country tries to tell itself a particular comforting narrative.
Of course, tomorrow commemorates a very significant day in this country's history, Juneteenth. Tomorrow is also an anniversary in and of itself, 5 years since it became a national holiday. How are you looking at it this year?
You know, this year I'm reveling in the joy of the celebration. Juneteenth is a special day. There are opportunities for us to talk about the horrors of slavery, the 12 million individuals taken from the western portion of the African continent. All of that is absolutely true and absolutely valuable. But Juneteenth is a special day. It is a day when a group of people heard that their destiny, the destiny of their children and of their children's children, was forever altered. Now, I'm not saying that it was going to be perfect, but it was altered. And there's an elation and a jubilation that happened in that moment that we can not even approximate what that felt like. I mean, I think that Obama's election got close, but even that did not rise to the level of what people felt at that moment. We're talking about a condition, a recognition, a denial that opened up a door for other opportunities for this community, for this group of people. And so Juneteenth is about joy. You know, I tell people I don't want to talk about the horrors of slavery on Juneteenth. I want to talk about the joy of the community. I want to have a red drink. I want to have barbecue. I want to dance. I want to play some drums. I want to have an enjoyable time. I want to hug people I don't know. I want to raise Boston Ben's flag and just celebrate in the joy of this community. Then the next day, then we can talk about everything else. But on Juneteenth, I want to dance.
Well, the next day in your world, you're
Yes.
in Nantucket doing it all over again, which is a pretty good place to be.
Yeah. It's a 2-day dance that I'm going to do.
Well, when I saw what you were doing, I realized how much I love the 2 words block party.
Yeah.
It just suggests such great things. It suggests people wandering out of their doors and coming together. It's brilliant.
Well, that's what we hope. This northern slope of Beacon Hill in the 19th century was where the Black community was. And so, in a real sense, they probably did have their own celebrations or discussions or gatherings, and that people could walk back and forth across the street. And so, while it may be a inconvenience for some of the residents, I hope people realize just how joyous this can be. And for a few hours on a day, for all of our neighbors to come together. We want people, whatever part of the city they're in, to come and just celebrate with us.
What are you going to do when the Scots show up tomorrow?
Oh, I'm going to welcome them and have a blast.
Because they are going to, I hope you have enough red drink.
You know what? We're going to make sure we have enough red drink for them. I will say that the First Minister of Scotland visited us when he was in town last week, and he was really moved by his visit and the story that we're telling. So we want to welcome the Scots. We'll welcome the Norwegians, the Moroccans, whoever else is in town. Come on by before you go and celebrate or watch the game. Everybody is welcome because this is a story for everyone. And, the Black community has a special way of celebrating that maybe we could teach them. We might teach them a line dance or two. Maybe the wobble, maybe Texas Hold'em. We'll figure out what we're going to teach them.
Oh, that would go so viral. You have to do this
Oh
now.
my
That
gosh,
is
yes.
so brilliant.
If the Tartan Army shows up, we will figure out what line dance to teach them. We can all do it together on Joy Street.
We know they're there. And that is, I love that you're doing this in this time because if you walk around the streets right now, you actually feel this. We haven't had a chance to talk about this on the show yet, but I live in Boston. I run in Boston all the time. And just seeing so many happy people out in the city right now is kind of revelatory, actually.
It is, and I live downtown, so I see everything, and it reminds you of the goodness of America. It reminds you of the goodness of Boston. I think this is Boston at its best, that we've been so welcoming to people, and I want people to understand like who we are and what we're about and what the opportunities are to just celebrate, right? And it's easy to get bogged down in the heaviness and all the issues and the weights that we carry. But Juneteenth is a day of joy. So we can put it down, we can celebrate, we can dance, and we can pick it up another day.
Noelle Trent, always so wonderful to have you here. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Noelle Trent is president and CEO of the Museum of African American History in Boston and Nantucket. The museum's Freedom, a Juneteenth celebration, begins June 19th with a free open house and block party at its Beacon Hill site. That's followed by a similar celebration at its Nantucket location on Saturday. You can find the full schedule on their website. Like coming up, pomp in these circumstances, how this was the season of controversial commencement speeches. Mary Grant, president of Mass Art, joins us for that and more. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Massachusetts is alive with the World Cup. The games, the gatherings, the colors of dozens of nations filling our streets and neighborhoods. GBH News is there, capturing the energy and the stories that make this moment unlike any other.
We are astounded. We are beyond belief that we stood up against Spain.
Get all the latest at gbhnews.org/World Cup. Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Hunter Higgs LLC, presenting Black Cat, a new play by Dan Hunter, a drama exploring science, Parkinson's disease, memory, and discoveries of the soul. June 18th through June 28th. Ticket information at bostonplaywrights.org. And Revision Energy, a renewable energy company building and servicing solar, batteries, and air source heat pumps for local homes and businesses for over 20 years. Revision Energy. Revision your power. More at revisionenergy.com. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, presenting classical soloists, popular artists, and a week of programs curated by Yo-Yo Ma amid the Berkshire Hills at Tanglewood. More at tanglewood.org.
The news and reporting you hear on GBH is made possible by the listeners who trust the GBH newsroom to deliver fact-based news and information every day. Support the journalism you trust. Pitch in online at gbhnews.org.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. It's time for a recurring feature, AI Actual Intelligence, where we tap into the most interesting thinkers in our region. Their insights and observations are totally original and algorithm-free. Today I'm joined by Mary Grant, president of Mass Art, who joins us every month. Welcome back. You've put away the cap and gown for the year.
We did put it away. It's at the dry cleaners. We'll get ready next year. But yes, the academic year officially wrapped up, and it was great.
And you had a nice commencement.
We had a beautiful commencement, just joyous celebration, capacity crowd, everybody happy. I saw one of our students the day after graduation, and this is where I almost was going to burst into tears. When I asked him how it was, he looked at me and he said, it was the best day of my life. You know, so those moments, and he said, how about for you? I said, same here.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Yeah.
Well, there are students around the country who would not agree with their own commencement ceremonies this year. As has been happening, in fact, hundreds of times now, we've seen speakers disinvited at commencement. So we wanted to start this conversation today, or I wanted to start the conversation today, asking you about what some are calling the disinvitation season, and what that means. Because as I was thinking about it this morning, there's this existential moment, too. I was thinking about my own graduation. The year before me, I went there to the Emerson graduation to see my friends graduate, and it was Spike Lee. And I remember being very disappointed because he basically told them, what you're going into, film, is really, really hard. Most of you won't end up getting jobs. And I thought, goodness, that's bleak.
Yeah.
And then the following year, mine was Peter Bogdanovich, the great Hollywood director, and the only thing I can remember is his great impersonations of Hitchcock and Cary Grant. So I thought, what is a commencement address supposed to be, and should it be provocative?
Well, commencement addresses have changed over the years. If you look back and you think about ones that signaled big public policy agendas, JFK, LBJ announced his war on poverty at a commencement address. So they signaled a time in a country and a direction, rallying the young folks in front of them as they're about to go out into the world. I think over years there have been times where speakers have decided to provoke and prepare and say, here's the world you're heading out into, be ready for it, or here's a moment in history that you're facing and how you should be thinking about it. And so hitting the right address is really hard, and students will speak up at these events, and I think it's very hard because I do worry about magnifying a cancel culture. If we're concerned that we may not agree with what the speaker's going to say, when inherent in the purpose of education is to introduce different perspectives. At the same time, it is also graduation.
Right.
So striking that balance of, a message of going into the world, you can have a balance of seriousness with perspective, with humor, but I think most importantly, it's about turning that moment when the last time this group may be together into a collective moment of hope and possibility, focusing on what brings us together as opposed to a speech which tells us all that's dividing us. You can talk about divisions, but also be able to push out, here's how your degree, here's how your education is preparing you. You're going to be okay.
Let me play a little bit of Harvard's then president, Drew Gilpin-Faust, delivering her commencement speech in 2017, where she spoke about the merits of free speech on college campuses.
Silencing ideas or basking in intellectual orthodoxy independent of facts and evidence impedes our access to new and better ideas, and it inhibits a full and considered rejection of bad ones. From at least the time of Galileo, we can see how repressing seemingly heretical ideas has blinded societies and nations to enhanced knowledge and understanding on which progress depends. We must work to ensure that universities do not become bubbles isolated from the concerns and discourse of the society that surrounds them.
But that is now happening regularly. I was citing statistics. There's about 345 speakers from 2000 to 2024 who were either disinvited or the speaker backed off once they understood what was happening and what was being said about them on campus. Where does that leave us right now?
I think you have to really think carefully about what you want that day to be about, because, that's a signature event. But I think throughout the entire academic year, the entire academic season, you have to be looking at this as an issue to address. Because if you're not doing it throughout the student's education and you pick that one moment to say, we're going to try to tackle it all on this very special day when it's about so many other things in that moment, it complicates it. But I completely agree with what Drew was saying, that is one of the roles of higher education, of university, is to be able to examine facts, to be able to, from those facts, draw conclusions that are grounded in evidence, to be able to enter into discussions in an informed way. And even if you don't like what you're hearing, be able to participate fully in it. That's what we need to be doing on our campuses. And if we try to do it on that one day, at that one moment, already filled with emotion, it's likely to go bad. But I do think that there is something there where you have to think, okay, what is the day about? What do we want to do on this day? How do we want to send our graduates out into the world? And then talk with your speakers and not give them a sense of what they're going to be entering into. I think that's really important, that, saying to the speaker, look, our graduates have been through a period of time in which there's a lot of anxiety, or there's a lot of hope, or they're worried. Help set the stage so that then they can think about how to scale their remarks appropriately.
Well, here's another example. So AI, this was a subject of a lot of commencement addresses. Students did not like, in many cases, hearing about AI. It didn't help that you had some CEOs, a former CEO of Google, a current record executive, talking about the importance of AI, acknowledging that it was going to take jobs. It is going to take jobs, most likely. The students didn't want to hear that, so there were lots of boos and hisses. I think back to my example of Spike Lee versus Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good at the time as a 21-year-old hearing Spike Lee, but I now realize how right he was. He was sending them off into the world that they chose to pursue, and remind them that you're going to have to work really exceptionally hard to succeed in film. What do you think about the students booing speakers talking about AI in this pivotal moment of AI in our society?
Well, look, just because we don't like it doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. And if you shut the speaker down, you're not giving the speaker the opportunity to share their full message. Again, I think it was at the University of Central Florida where right from the beginning, once the speaker used the words AI, students started booing. And then when she talked about it's, we didn't have this a few years ago, they applauded. Could we just kind of settle down and listen? Because if you stayed through the speech, you probably heard the back and the forth around what this is going to do and how you need to use all of your tools to be prepared to harness this, to lead with it. But if you just stop the conversation, you're going to miss the whole perspective. And I think that we have to work with our students to be able to say, just listen. This is, and also for goodness sake, how about a little decorum? Because commencements are rowdy and fun and celebratory, but could we just settle down and not be, this person has traveled all this way, they've put time and thought into their remarks, and to be shut down like that, would probably be very puzzling to someone who maybe isn't familiar with what may happen on college campuses.
Who, definitely is not used to.
Is not used to
the independence some people are feeling.
Well, and also, it's a day where your families are there with you too. I always think about, I think about the grandparents that are there on those days, and what do you want them feeling on that day when they are so proud of their family member, and maybe it's a first-generation family. So that day, everybody in the audience is there with a different story, a different hope, a different perspective. So how do you not turn it into a day that blows up? Some things are out of our control. We don't always know what speakers are going to say. I mean, I've sat through some uncomfortable speeches where you're like, okay, but then you move on. You move on because then you move on to the awarding of the degrees and turning this talent out into the world. So that moment, you just don't want it to freeze the whole ceremony.
I'm talking with Mary Grant, the president of MassArt. We have our conversations monthly. Let's move on to something that people may not realize is happening, and this is new federal guidelines that will likely reshape arts education, higher education, arts education in this country. What is happening right now?
Yeah, this is, when this is actually extends back a few administrations. It actually began in the Obama and then carried through the Biden administration and now in the Trump administration. So different fits and starts of looking at the return on investment of a when you're paying for a degree. So it began, I think, initially looking at proprietary institutions, those schools that were maybe for-profit schools and lack of degree completion. So the debt that people were taking on. And now in this administration, it's moved towards really trying to measure earnings based on, what you get when you're in the field. So let's take a graduate of a fine arts program. The first few years of their career, they're likely not going to be at their highest earning level. But they're now comparing that earnings level 3 years out of school to somebody who has been in the workforce for 14 years. And they're trying to make I think it's a simple equation that in his 14 years without a bachelor's degree, that you don't need a degree. I mean, if you want to simplify it. And certainly there are some fields where you thrive and do well without, the paper. But it's not that simple, Jared. It's comparing apples and oranges to elephants. It's so different.
Well, how are they using this formula that, okay, you're spending X amount for your college education, it's not going to net you X amount in your salary, so how will it reshape education? What guidelines do colleges and universities have to adhere to?
Yeah, it's going to be if you get measured, I think it's 2 times, then the threat is that they're going to pull federal funding. So again, it's as opposed to the carrot, it's the stick. And it really will, and there's an appeals, they've eroded the appeals process. If you look at some of the degree fields, the coding that we have to follow, it has not been examined in a long time. And then a lot of artists end up being sole proprietors. They're running their own business. And those earnings are not always recorded in the same way if you're working for an employer. So even the math to get at this is very flawed. And we have graduates from certainly Mass Art that are graduating in a range of degrees from architecture, industrial design, education, fine arts. So whatever you're earning, it can punish the whole school. So let's say you're a school that produces mostly fine arts painters, and it may take you a while and stick with that path, but you may end up doing very well. But let's say it's a few years before that happens. The entire school could be penalized based on those salary statistics. Some of the schools that are in the biggest uproar over this are the religious schools. Because if you're going into pastoral care, if you're a divinity school producing folks who are going into the field, those are low-wage jobs by design. And so schools are going to be punished for turning out folks into professions that are really important, that are not going to have high earnings, certainly not initially.
So the New York Times points out this could affect Juilliard, the great arts programs at Yale and Harvard. Is there a way for universities to get around this?
There was an open comment period on the regulations. We provided comments. The Association of Independent Colleges of Art and Design across the country provided comments. The theology schools all provided comments. So the federal government has to respond to every single comment, but their intention was to have this go into effect in July. We have to see what happens if they change the regulations based on feedback, because nobody's saying don't hold us accountable, but it's hold us accountable according to standards that make sense and things that can be appealed. Because I would certainly, if it was a program at Mass Art that maybe didn't have high degrees of earning, I wouldn't want the whole school to be penalized, because I have certainly students who are going to all kinds of professions who are doing very well. And think about your first job out of college. It's a slow climb to get to a point.
Sure was.
Yeah, I mean, right. We
Especially
remember.
going into media, I should have listened to Spike Lee.
That's right. There you go. But so 3 years out, when you have just graduated, that is not a good time frame for comparing it to someone who's been in the workforce for almost 2 decades at that point.
I'm going to swing around quickly to look at the monitor. Yes, actually, President Obama is speaking now at the opening of the Obama Presidential Center. You know a little bit about these things because you were in a leadership role at, is it the Edward M. Kennedy Institute for the U.S. Senate? Did I bastardize that? I got it right?
Perfect.
That was off of memory. No script needed
well
there.
Well done, sir. Yes.
As you see this moment in Chicago, and this is different. This is not a presidential library. We can make that distinction too, because you won't find it all, except for a few loans, National Archives there. But this is reimagining, the Obamas are anyway, what a presidential library could be in this instance.
Yeah, I can't wait to go and look at this from everything from the collection of art, 28 commissioned works of art for this. Two of them happen to be Mass Art alums.
Who are the two?
Jack Pearson is in there, and Maria Magdalena Campos Pong.
I always forget that she's a Mass Art alum.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking about blue chip artists here.
So there's a collection of incredible artists. There's basketball courts. There's libraries. There's community centers. There's externally facing art. There's gardens. So to me, it feels not only like a beautiful place to see art, but to understand the impact that that a president can have on the world. And I think that that's what it's about. There's a replica of the Oval Office. And when I think back to what some of the most precious moments that I had at the Kennedy Institute was the replica of the U.S. Senate chamber, where we would hold classes. And when a group of students would step into that space, something about would change, the decorum.
I'll say your posture just changed when you were expressing that.
Because you're doing something important. And so for the Obamas to take a look at what the role of a president and their whole administration is about, and there's the third floor has a room devoted to the common good, where it's looking at what happens when politicians work across the aisle, build coalitions. We can get things done like national health care. So I think it's understanding the history, it's understanding leadership, but built into the neighborhood where the Obamas are from. So really important to be good neighbors. And if you look at the peninsula where both the EMK is and the JFK Library, I mean, when the JFK Library went out there was very little on that peninsula. So it became a beacon of restoring a beautiful part of the city. And now there's walkways, pathways, sailing spots, UMass Boston, the Mass Archives, the Kennedy Institute. It's a thriving, beautiful part of the city. But it began with the vision of the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum. And so the Obama Center doing that within a neighborhood, but being mindful they're in a neighborhood. And so how do they make sure that that neighborhood feels like this is theirs and it's not an exclusive place?
Right, you don't want gentrification, which has been expressed as an area of concern.
Yeah, but I think that their focus, they really are connected and mindful of that. So, but it's going to take the staff of the museum and the center to create opportunities to invite that neighborhood in. After the ribbon cuttings and the speeches and the performances, invite your neighbors in, because they're the ones every day that are going to be looking at this and feeling proud of it and feeling like it's the story of that is for them as well. I can't wait to get there, though.
I can't wait to see it either, especially for all that fantastic art and great architecture.
Yes.
Well, I want to end with an update, because we talked a couple of times on this show about the Midtown Hotel and the AI-generated art that they were featuring. They were called out for it, and then wisely, this marriage between mass art and the Midtown Hotel came together. So now your students' art is up?
This is amazing, and really a huge shout out to the folks at the Midtown Museum. They've been supportive of us in our auction, but they reached out. They did a call for art, and they did a jury selection, and there are 11 pieces of original art.
And I'll point out, it's not what we're seeing on the stream now. This is the AI generated art. So now, as Mary's talking, we'll go to the student art.
And there's 8 artists were selected and 11 pieces of work, and it's art from around Boston. So the public gardens or a subway. And one of our students actually did a piece looking at the Mass Art Treehouse, which is our residence hall. But I think it is wonderful. It was commissioned work. All the students were paid for their work. And they now have, works of art that they have sold as commissioned artists in a hotel in Boston, representing things that matter to them in the city of Boston. So it's a beautiful story, and there's real artwork by real artists in the Midtown Hotel.
And they're getting a leg up on their earning career even before leaving Mass Art.
They sure are.
So that's a way to address that, too. Well, Mary Grant, always great to see you. Next time you're here, we'll be in the thick of summer, so you can tell us about your summer recommendations for reading and movies.
I've got a stack.
Oh, I can't. Right. We always love to hear what you in particular are doing. Mary Grant, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks so much, Jared.
Mary Grant is the president of Mass Art, and she joins us regularly. Well, Well, coming up, we move on to Momentum, a festival celebrating Black culture that promises to offer, quote, unapologetic dopeness, creativity, and joy. That's a theme today. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
President Trump is expected to finalize a deal to end the conflict with Iran as soon as Thursday. We'll speak to Middle East observers about what terms would need to be in that deal for all parties to be satisfied. I'm Carolyn Beeler. Hear our in-depth Iran coverage and all of the day's top global news and stories next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the University of Rhode Island's College of Business with an online Master's of Science in Supply Chain Management designed to prepare students to develop resilient and flexible supply chain strategies. uri.edu/MS Supply Chain. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865. And Newport Mansions, presenting Loyalty or Liberty, a new play exploring the difficult choices Newporters faced during the American Revolution. Performances at Hunter House Tuesdays and Saturdays through August. NewportMansions.org.
National Media Visits. We live here. GBH News 89.7, gbhnews.org, and streaming on the GBH app. Trusted local news.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. We are talking about Momentum, which is going to be running June 24th through June 28th across Greater Boston, from Boston to Brockton at the Fuller Craft Museum. Joining me now are Catherine T. Morris, the founder and executive director of the Boston Art and Music Soul Festival, BAMS Fest, the organization behind Momentum, and Isaiah Thelwell, who is a Greater Boston young professional, one of the partners helping to bring Momentum to Brockton through Fuller After Dark at the Fuller Craft Museum. You two are collaborating for lots more joy. Noelle got us started off by talking about this weekend.
Yeah.
Catherine, tell me what's coming up and what you've done with Momentum.
Yeah, so Momentum, this is our second year presenting it to the community, and it's a collaborative effort amongst organizations and artists and culture and small businesses to activate our communities in the way that we want to see that change. And so last year we had 17 organizations. This year we have 18 organizations. And we're doing 5 days, 15 events. We're real busy. But really, we're in a critical time where collaboration and connection, community, culture is just necessary. Belonging is necessary. So this year is just really, really special to be able to extend from Somerville and Cambridge to Brockton, to be able to bring this platform to as many people as possible, and that residents can be proud of ultimately.
Well, let's go to Brockton as we talk about this. Isaiah, tell me, I understand that this is the second step of something that began last fall, and a lot of fun you had at the Fuller Craft Museum. I love that museum, by the way. I've covered them many, many, many times. If people haven't been there, it is a gem.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Jared, I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful facility. And when the event came to be at first, it was, like you said, it's a beautiful place. And how do we get more people to come inside that museum? And so sitting down with the leadership there, and we figured out, and we were able to partner on this idea called the Museum Night. And it was being done up here in Boston with the several other museums. So like, why can't we have this in Brockton? It's a beautiful space. The capacity's there, and the demand was there, and so it was a wonderful time.
So what happens after dark at the Fuller Craft Museum?
Well, it's a assortment things. So essentially we start off. We have music, live DJs. We have DJ King Collins, who's a great local artist. He's going to be having tunes going the entire night. We're going to have food trucks. We're going to have activations that are free, kind of free things for attendees to go in. They get, might get a portrait. They're going to get sculptures. They're going to get a lot of, kind of great freebies at the event, with the ticket rather. Food, drinks. It's going to be a lot.
I have to just say, I went last year and I had to park in the second parking lot
It was unpopular.
and walk. It was packed, and I had the best night. I sweated so hard. The DJ was playing all the tunes, and I met new people, and it was just such a great time. And I was just very proud to see Brockton activated this way. So just congratulations. So.
Well, what does it do for younger people? As I mentioned, you're part of the Greater Brockton. Also, I can't say that. Young professionals. What's the awareness that comes with in reaching out to young people in particular and bringing them into a museum space?
Jeez, Jared. I mean, how much time do we have, right? Well, the main thing is that we need to get young professionals, in spaces like the museum, for these institutions to continue. And it's so vitally important that we have these institutions like the Fuller Craft Museum in Brockton, because the Fuller Craft Museum itself is a one-in-a-kind museum. It's the only craft museum in Massachusetts, and I think larger in part of the country. It's definitely not many craft museums like that. But we have to be able to, the typical demographic at the museum is aging. So we need to get young people in there. And so that's how we came to marry this idea. It's like, how do we get people, what do young people like to do now? And they like to have a good time. They like to have a drink. They like to party, not crazy raves or anything, but they like to have a good time.
I love it. There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. The curatorial staff might have something different to say, but
I'm sure I have an email waiting for me already.
But yeah, so that's how we came about it.
Well, Catherine, speaking of DJs, you have DJ Jazzy Jeff coming as part of Momentum. Tell me what that's about.
So, for the existence of what we've built with Bands Festival, we choose headliners very carefully. It's really about their character, their values. Do they align with our values as an organization? And how they live their lives, how can that be inspiration for communities and artists? And so every person nationally that has hit our stage has been chosen very carefully for that, so we study who they are. And DJ Jazzy Jeff, while he is known for many things, his music, his skills, he does a lot
Prince of Bel-Air.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt. But he really has a big heart. He really ensures that future generations live in their creativity, that he encourages collaboration, that he encourages that if you're in this to make money, you're not going to last long, right? If you see something that just inspires you and you create it just to create it and let the world have it. You cannot do it in your lifetime. And that's really critical for anyone, even that's not an artist, about how you show up for people and your work and the things that matter to you. You just do it because you do it, period. And we wanted that representation at Bands Festival specifically this year. We have this theme called Play, which is the art of play. We don't get to play as much anymore.
No, we don't. We don't make time for it.
We don't. And we want to make time for that. So different games and activities, from dance to our vendors to competitive friendly games, but just really encouraging people to be reminded to be outdoors and be together, curated by a list of amazing DJs. They're going to take folks on a very sonic experience.
Well, speaking of reminding, and I joked about this with Noelle, but I was a little bit serious too. What do you do for Juneteenth if the Scots show up at the African Meeting House? Which would be such a joyous thing, as she said. And I think we're all reminded about the fun that can be had, even in these times. I've seen it myself, even before the media picked up on this. I remember running last weekend and seeing all of these joyous Scots just out and about. I thought, my goodness, they're easy to identify because all the men are wearing kilts.
Yes.
But I was thinking that they're just soaking this up and they're having so much fun. And this is exactly what you're both doing. You're creating these environments that I think so many of us have forgotten that we can have.
Yeah, it's important to be reminded that it's okay to have a little bit of soul. We all need that, and to give people grace and be kind, and also just discover things about yourself that maybe didn't know or that you like, and that there are opportunities for that to happen in your neighborhood or going to another one. But we have to get out of our comfort zones and our silos, because if we don't, we're going to perpetuate these divides, and we cannot afford to do that anymore.
Well, Isaiah, what did you find in the museum after? Maybe a couple days after, a couple mornings after, but just what you began to glean, how people looked at the museum and how they saw it differently after being near rave at the museum, rave adjacent.
Going around town, Jerry, I'm in Brockton a lot. It's really important for me that I see that the city, gets more of this type of stuff. We get more of these, and again, why we're so thankful to Kat, bringing us on board for Momentum and investing in that. Going around town, talking to people, their first time in the museum, they've been in Brockton their entire life. Their first time in the museum was at After Dark. These people I went to school with, people older than me. Mind you, the museum, it's free for Brockton residents.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So seeing the impact, it's almost instantly, you know what I'm saying? But the important thing is that it's consistent and it continues. And that it's not just us, not just with the Fuller Craft, with After Dark, but with other events, and not just the museum, a lot of other things go on. And that's the type of stuff that transforms a city, transforms a culture, and transforms reputation. We need to have, these kind of things.
And Catherine, I know you and I have talked about this before. Now Momentum is part of this too. We've talked about this in regard to BAMS Fest and, of course, the work you're doing with the Boston Foundation and in being able to continue the work. What are you building here when this does continue year after year and it becomes more institutionalized?
It's a blueprint, right? I didn't get here by myself. We didn't get here by ourselves. We have the Elma Lewises of our time. We have the Dr. Noelle Trent of our time. That they're building these blueprints so that there's a reference point for the next generation to pick up and do further. And there hasn't been enough blueprinting, so to be able to provide infrastructure to be able to teach an artist of how do you scale an event, or how do you write a contract, or how do you promote yourself, or how do you collaborate in other towns, we're building blueprints to leave for the next generation so they don't have to start in a place of emptiness or confusion or feeling like no one thought of us years ago. That is a responsibility we all have for the next generations we may or may not meet, and we're blueprinting in that way.
Well, final question for you both in about the minute we have left. How do you make sure those roots become so embedded that it doesn't end?
Wow, I'm going to let you start with that.
One, I think I just wanted to piggyback on what you just said, Kat, the blueprints, right? When there's a model that's been done before, when people can look to say, when we make these events, we have to go out we have to go to sponsors, we have to go to local organizations, banks, and everything like that. Like, if we can say, listen, this has been done before, it's not crazy risky. We can see the benefit. We know how it's going to help people. We know how the community's going to be changed. That is the stuff that really changes, again, the community, because it's been done. It's a lot easier for a bank to say, oh yeah, it's been done before. Absolutely.
Return on investment.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And everybody wants to see community change, but they want to feel that their investment's going to turn out.
All right, he bought you a little bit of time.
He did. I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat this question. Oh, I got so caught up in
getting the roots down and making sure that it stays.
One is you got to remind people that, like for us, that we have changed our language to say that BAMS Festival is the people's festival. You got to own it collectively. It's not a singular idea. It started that way, but how this has morphed into this blueprint has been because of everyone's lived experiences that have shaped it to actually have roots, so that if we mess up or if there's something that they want to see more of, they have a seat at the table at it. So that's how we set the roots.
Well, thank you so much for being. This show has been all about joy today. I love that. It's been really happy. Thank you so much for being here, both of you.
Thank you.
Good luck with Momentum. Momentum runs June 24th through June 28th across Greater Boston, from Boston to Brockton. You can find the full schedule online at bamsfest.org. Catherine T. Morris is the founder and executive director of the Boston Art and Music Soul Festival, the organization behind Momentum. Isaiah Thelwell is with the Greater Boston Young Professionals, one of the partners helping bring Momentum to Brockton through Fuller After Dark at the Fuller Craft Museum. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow for a Juneteenth special featuring Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and writer Annette Gordon-Reed. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4.